It has begun.
Well, all right then. Shall we start the meeting?
Yes, sir.
Welcome to the regular meeting of the Design Review Board on Tuesday, November 16th, 2021. This meeting is hereby called to order. Would staff call the roll for the members who are present and not?
Yes. Board Member Blaney.
Here.
Board Member Kent.
Here.
Board Member Kowalski.
Here.
Board Member Summers.
Here.
Vice Chair Reggie. For now. And Chair Paul.
Here. Thank you. Next, we'll move to the meeting procedures. Due to the COVID-19 shelter-in-place order, we have had to establish new ways of conducting our public meetings. I'd like to ask staff to address how that public comment will be heard and how the meetings will be conducted.
Yes, thank you, Chair Paul. Good evening, everyone. In addition to accepting written comments up to the DRB meeting, staff is accepting public comments over the phone. Members of the public are invited to participate via conference call at the following phone number: 669-900-9128, and the meeting ID is 835-3174-3214, and then hit the pound sign. You can also find that login information on the agenda on the Design Review Board website. If you are participating by telephone tonight and wish to comment during public comment, please press *9 when the chair opens the public comment period and you'd like to speak. This virtually raises your hand. Once it's your turn, you will press *6 to unmute yourself, and everyone will have 3 minutes to speak. If you wish to speak and you are not on the telephone, use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of the screen. And I will repeat this information before each public comment. If you submitted comments prior to the meeting by email or letter, it has been forwarded to the Design Review Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. Anyone with an urgent communication on a topic not on the agenda may address the board at this time. And please know that anything raised here has not been noticed or agendized, so there will be no discussion at this time, but we will hear you.
Yes, if you wish to speak on something not on the agenda, please raise your hand, press *9 if you're phoning in, and use the raise the hand icon if you are on the website. So we have, first one is caller ending in 2995, and you will have 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is Victoria DeWitt, and I have submitted a petition to the Design Review Board with 53 people supporting the recusal of Stuart Summers from participating in the review of any and all hillside projects. We now have more than 60 people that have added their names to this petition who want Stuart Summers to recuse himself because they don't feel he can be impartial in the review of hillside projects like the one before you tonight at 5254 Fremont Marquard, which is requesting an exception to the natural state requirement. I request that you take action on this petition tonight and recuse Stuart Summers from participating in the review of 5254 Fremont Marquard. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other urgent communications to the board? Leslie, you're muted.
Thank you very much. The next person is Davis Perkins. Davis Perkins, you have 3 minutes. Can you hear us, Davis?
Is he there?
There, folks.
Yes, hi. We can hear you. Go ahead. It looks like we lost him.
Let's try it again. Davis, are you there?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh, yeah, there he is.
Okay.
Okay,
You have
great.
3 minutes.
Good evening, folks. My name is Davis Perkins. My wife and I live here on Upper Fremont. We've lived here for the past 18 years. I am a retired firefighter paramedic and also an artist.
Davis, is this related to Fremont? Because that is coming later on the agenda.
This is about the redwood trees.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
that's on the
okay,
agenda,
so
so you'll have your time to talk later. This is for items from the public that are not on the agenda tonight. So just hold your comments until we call that item. Okay? Davis?
And
Davis, do you
that
understand
is-
that? Oh, we lost him.
Yeah, no, I demoted him. So that is all we have. And Dave Perkins, we will call on you later.
There was another
So that is all
correspondence
the-
that we received from the public, but they're not,
It's correct. They're not here today.
they're not
They're
here.
not here at the meeting.
Okay.
I do, just so though normally we don't respond to items not on the agenda, and apparently we don't always have items not on the agenda in the DRB agenda, but now we do. So I just wanted to, we do have our city attorney here, Bob Epstein here, and I just was hoping that Bob, you can just respond to that, because that is, I just feel as we move forward in tonight's proceedings, that should be addressed.
Well, I think what I'd like to do is defer comment until the item's called. Really,
Okay, that's good.
Ms. DeWitt's comments were directed at a specific item, and therefore they were not really appropriately made during open time, as was directed. That's for items that are not on the agenda. And she was speaking to an agenda item. I didn't wish to interrupt and point that out.
Okay.
She's made her point. She's made it in writing an extensive email correspondence that we've reviewed and responded to. And I am prepared to speak to the issue at the conclusion of the staff report on the item.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
I got
you.
a question for you, Rob, though.
Sure.
I think that the thing that came up, like Stuart mentioned, was do we need to have this kind of
Open time.
open time for the public like the Planning Commission has?
I want to take a look at it. I believe the answer to be no. And because the DRB is not a legislative body, and therefore I don't believe the rule applies, but that one's going to take a dive into the Brown Act for me.
Okay.
And we already did it tonight. So the question's moot for tonight, but we'll take a look at it and advise staff. And I think that Leslie may be right. It may just have been changing of the guard. And, we have a lot of public meetings, and staff's, playing catch up, trying to make sure that they're following all requirements. It's always better to, do something if you think it's legally required. But if it isn't, then the board should know that, and staff should know that. And we'll advise on that between now and the next meeting. And I would like to just say here on the confines of my laptop that it's a pleasure to see you, Chair Paul. It's been a number of years. It'd be better in person, but I'm happy to be at the meeting, even though I look like I'm about 1 inch tall.
We all do. It's good to see you too, Rob.
Thank you.
Good to see everybody. I wish that sooner rather than later we can all be back in one room. But for now, we're Zooming.
I
Is that it?
apologize.
Leslie?
No, someone is now raising their hand for items not on the agenda, so if we can.
Okay, well then, since we've
And they were
started,
the
open it
person
up.
who did, yeah.
And just, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to turn
Yeah,
off
since we've
my
opened it up.
camera, as is our practice at the
Mhm.
city council meetings, just to keep the focus on the board members. But just like the genie in the bottle, anytime I'm summoned, you will see me appear.
Thank you. Yes, we
Okay.
have another a comment from the public?
Yes, yes, Robert. has a-
Not on the agenda, though.
Yes. So Robert, if you can unmute, you will have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. I thought I was on the agenda. You've got a copy of our letter dated November 10th, where we were questioning an exterior paint color that was painted on a house next to ours that does not comply with the city requirements for both hillside standards and the resolution 324 that is part of our subdivision, District 10, plus another city document, 1988. So what we're asking this board is to take a look at our letter, take a look at the color of that house, which is that Edgecombe gray. We do not believe it complies with a medium to dark shade, earth tone. And we believe that this is something that should be corrected. It is a light earth tone shade, which is not in compliance with the city ordinances or the hillside requirements. We also, in closing, we would ask the board to consider putting this on the agenda for discussion or for a hearing. We're available to answer any of your questions, and we would just ask you to basically, I mean, to us, it's clear that this color is a light color, off-white to light tone. So we thank you for your time, and we look forward to hopefully talking about this some more. The other thing in closing is that the city, this design review board should take a look at the city's color, official color board, which was mentioned in our documents attachments. That I have talked to the city planner in the past, the director, years ago, and he mentioned that a number of these colors do not comply with District 10. So I don't know why, as a second note, this design board, why not take the time to go and figure out which colors do and do not comply, because the hillside is supposed to be a natural setting and one that blends in with the other houses. This house does not, especially in our neighborhood. So I thank you again for your time. I'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.
And thank you for your comments. Are there
Thank
any
you,
other
Robert.
public comments?
Before I say no, again, if you're wishing to talk on an item not on the agenda for this special meeting, please raise your hand using the raise your hand icon at the bottom of the screen. There is one more. Stacy Clement. Again, these are for items not on the agenda. Stacy, you have 3 minutes.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Thanks. So I don't want to belabor some of the points that have already been mentioned. I just want to also express our same concerns that a lot of our neighbors have, primarily with the parking situation and fire safety and access on the roads.
Stacy, I'm going to interrupt you right here. This is actually an item that is on the agenda, so I will, you'll have to speak during that item. So thank you, and we look forward to your comments. Yeah, no worries.
You'll have plenty of time when that item comes up to speak. This is for items that are not on the current agenda. This is just open time for the public to comment on things that are not on the agenda that they might feel would be of interest to the design review board. Is there any other one?
There's another one. Yes,
Okay.
Bubba 22. So Bubba 22, if you're here to speak about 800 Mission or 5254 Fremont, please lower your hand. This is not the time, but if
Just
it's
wait.
not one of those two items, yeah, exactly. You have 3 minutes. Oh, I hit the wrong one. I apologize.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
My name is Vicky Fernandez and I live in the West End. I just wanted to say that the policy that you have of not sending notices regarding building meetings is one that kind of contributes to the feelings that the city is less than transparent regarding building. I'm sure you don't want to be seen as trying to slip things past the public, but that's what people feel is happening. And I know that it can be a pain to have to mail things to us. And if you want to send emails, that'd be great. But I feel like we deserve to be contacted and informed about what's happening with building permits and reviews. And that's all I have to say. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicky.
Anyone else that wishes to speak on an item not on the agenda tonight? Anyone else, Leslie?
Please, please raise your hand using the raise your hand icon or press *9 if you're voting in. And with that, one more, Steve. So Steve, not on Fremont and not on 800 Mission, and you will have 3 minutes to speak.
Steve, are you there? There you are. We can't hear you though. We're getting some bad audio, I guess. Is this a call in? Can you recall in on the phone or? I'm sorry, we can't understand you, Steve, so.
Steve, if you could go to the agenda and please phone in, that would be helpful. Using your phone.
Was he on the computer?
That was yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like he is.
Phoning in?
Yeah, that's unfortunate. So Steve is raising his hand again. Let's try it again.
Okay.
Sorry about this. Steve? You have 3 minutes. You can unmute yourself if you're on the phone. Please press *6 to unmute.
Steve, you're still muted. If you could press *6 on the phone.
Or if you're on the screen, the mute button is on the bottom left. There you go.
Yeah. Go ahead, Steve.
Oh boy, come on.
I'm sorry, Steve.
Yeah, apologies.
We're not getting good audio, so may I suggest you write whatever you wanted down and send it in, and we can consider it at our next meeting. Thank you. Now, is there anyone else that would like to speak on an agenda item? I mean, on an item that is not on the agenda. Is anyone else?
It's *9. No, or raise your hand. No.
Nope. Okay, so
Oh my
then,
goodness. One more. Let's
Oh.
see if it's Steve. Nope. There's a phone call. 7867. You have 3 minutes.
unmute yourself.
Please unmute yourself. *6 to unmute, please.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we
I
can.
did it.
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, thank you very much. Sorry for that, I had to redial in. Yeah, my point is that there's a lot of.
Can you
folks
identify
that-
yourself?
Yes, I am Steve Thompson at 59 Fremont Road.
All right,
I
are you
live
gonna-
directly.
Steve, are you going to talk about Fremont Street? Because if you are, it's on
No,
the
no,
agenda
you
later.
asked me my address. I just gave you my address.
Oh, I know,
This
but
is not about, yeah, this is not about Fremont Road.
Okay.
You asked me my address, I gave it to you.
Sure.
Okay, so my point is this, is that there's, for lack of better words, maybe a need for an organization chart. Leslie mentioned initially that there's a lot of new people and faces and conversations and a lot of information flying around. And I think it would behoove all of you to create a very structured organization plan of who reports to who, what are the direct lines of authority throughout the entire building process, from DRB to the mayor to the council to other Dave Hogan, other people that are dotted lines to other people. So I think this would be of very great value to all of us so that we're contacting the proper officials and the messages can get through clearly so there's no disconnection in terms of what the messaging is. And I think this is something that should be updated, kept updated on a regular basis. It can be put on your website, if nothing else, and a simple organization chart showing boxes and dotted lines and hard lines, and that's pretty much it. Okay?
Well, thank you, Steve. I'm glad you finally got to say your piece after the
Yeah.
problems with the phone. But good, thank you very much.
Yes.
Is there anyone else that wishes to speak?
I do not see anyone else wishing to speak.
All right,
can
then we can go on with our meeting now. So let me now describe the meeting procedures for the public. All three items on tonight's agenda are on the consent calendar. The first item is the minutes. The second two are the final design reviews for the projects. And these projects have already received design review recommendations of approval and have been reviewed and approved or recommended approved by the Planning Commission themselves. Projects are being brought forward to review the incorporation of any recommended design changes, and no formal action by the DRB is occurring tonight. I'll list each item on the consent calendar and see if there is a request from the public or the board to move it to take it off the consent calendar. And if an item is pulled from the consent calendar, the procedure will be as follows. We'll begin with a staff report for each item, followed by the applicant's presentation. Members of the public will then be invited to speak. That's when everyone that wants to speak on one of these items can speak. Then community members on the conference call can speak when they receive the notification from Leslie and they have been unmuted. So please keep your comments to 3 minutes. The board will have the opportunity to ask questions of staff or the public after each segment. And we will close then the public hearing and bring the matter back to the board for final discussion. I hope that's all clear to everyone. And so now we'll move on to the consent calendar, which has 3 items. The first item is the approval of the Design Review Board meeting minutes of October 19th, 2021. Are there any comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar?
So if you wish to comment on the minutes, please raise your hand. I see that there is 2995 phone call. I'm going to allow you to talk, but again, this is for the minutes. If you don't wish to talk on the minutes, please lower your hand. All right, phone caller 2995, you were speaking on the minutes.
I guess I'm a little confused. How do we pull something off the consent calendar to discuss it then?
Again,
when do I do that?
When the item is called, then we'll ask for public comment and then you can do it. This first item is just for the minutes. So basically, if someone feels that there needs to be a correction to the minutes or that the minutes don't reflect the actual board meeting that we had on October 19th, that would be the comment that would be coming either from the board members themselves or from the public that was there at that time. And then if you want to If you want to comment on items number 2, which is 800 Mission Avenue, or item number 3, 5254 Fremont Street, which is all, they are both also on the consent calendar, we will call them in order, and then you will have an opportunity to speak, okay? So if you have a question, 2995, if you have a question or comment on the minutes of October 19th, now's the time to speak. Do you? No.
Yeah. And
Okay.
we'll go through each item one by one.
So any other comments from the public on the minutes?
No, sir.
Then would one of the board members like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we accept the meetings as submitted, minutes as submitted.
And a second?
I
I'll
will
second
second. Oh, that's okay.
We have a second by Sharon. Any discussion on the minutes from the board? Seeing none, all those in, or do we have a roll call on the minutes?
Yeah, we'll do a roll call just for accessibility issues. So the motion was from Board Member Kent. The second was from Board Member Kowalski. So voting on the minutes, Board Member Blaney,
Abstain.
Board Member Kent,
Aye.
Board Member Kowalski,
Aye.
Board Member Summers,
Aye.
Vice Chair Reggie is absent. Chair Paul.
Aye. So that meeting, I mean, that those minutes are approved. I think, what was it? 4-0, 1 abstention.
Yes.
All right, the next item on the agenda is 800 Mission Avenue. This is the consent agenda. That's the Aegis Living in San Rafael. To review the final details on the upper story step back along the Mission Avenue elevation, the landscaping of all outdoor common areas, the patios and the terraces, and the articulation to the north elevation of an approved 103-room, 105-bed residential care facility with memory care services located on 2 vacant parcels at the northwest corner of Lincoln and Mission Avenue. Are there any comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar?
Wish to speak on the 800 Mission item and take it, have objections or take it off the consent calendar, please raise your hand. Dial *6 to raise your hand, and or hover over and use the raise the hand icon. I apologize, it's *9 to raise your hand.
*6 to unmute.
And there are, exactly, there are no comments from the public.
Okay. Anyone on the board wish to remove this from the agenda of the consent calendar? No. All right. Oh,
Could I
Sharon?
have a definition, please? I don't know what that means to remove it from the consent calendar.
It means that if there's no further discussion on this item, we will just approve it or recommend approval of it as is, based on the changes that were made since the last meeting that we had on this item. We had asked for some changes from them. They have made these changes. If those changes addressed all our comments or concerns, then we can just not even discuss it. We don't have to get a report from Steve, and we can just go on to the next item.
Okay, thank you. I understand now.
Okay, and you're good with it being on the consent calendar?
I have a couple of small questions on the landscape and a comment. So I guess I have to
You would
pull it
like to
off.
pull it from the consent calendar?
I don't think I have a choice.
All right. Then we'll pull that.
If you just have questions that can be answered by the staff planner or the applicant, and you're satisfied, then
Okay.
you can keep
And
it
then
on
I
the
also
consent
have
calendar.
one smallish comment on the landscape. So again, I don't know if I have a choice, but to pull it off consent.
Is it a question or is it a,
Both, question and comment.
sounds like we should pull it off the calendar then. if it's-
I mean, I don't really need a staff report or an applicant presentation. I just have a couple small questions and a comment. If we can do
Can
that.
Why don't you
Can
state
we
them?
do that, Leslie?
Why not? I think I'm being quite maverick with this whole meeting, so let's just keep going with it.
Maybe we should get Rob Epstein involved and see what the proper
He's like, why are you
procedure
even
is.
doing this consent
I would
calendar?
suggest taking the question and if possible, answering the question.
Yep.
At this time.
Thank you, Rob.
Yes.
That might be a good compromise. If you ask the question and Jeff is satisfied, we don't have to discuss it any further. Would that work for you, Jeff, or not?
Well, I have one small comment unrelated to my question.
All right, then let's pull it off the consent calendar. And,
Sorry.
and maybe we could ask Steve for a condensed, less than 3-minute staff report.
I can do that.
Yes, but let's see if the third one stays on the consent calendar
I'm sorry.
before we move to item 2. Let's see if item number 3 stays on the consent calendar before we go to the presentation of item number 2.
Why would we do that?
Because then you can dismiss the consent calendar if 3 stays on the consent,
Oh,
and those folks can go home.
I see. Okay. Well, then we'll table item number 2 for the moment and go on to item number 3, which is 5254 Fremont Marquard. This is the final design review on the practicability of planting coast redwoods on the project site as part of a request for a lot line adjustment, for property line adjustment exception, and environmental design review for a change in the existing lot configuration, a new 2,492 square foot single family residence on the newly created vacant lot, the conversion of an existing residence, which would result in a new 1,554 square foot residence with an 1,104 square foot internal accessory dwelling unit, and an exception for minimum natural state and front and side yard setbacks on the proposed Fremont Road lot. Are there any comments from the public on this item for the consent calendar?
I'm actually going to switch it. If you wish to comment and take it off the consent, raise your hand. I don't think I'll need to let you speak. I see one.
We have a board member
and-
right now. That's Sharon.
As
Sharon
well,
wishes to
and-
pull it off the consent calendar.
Yeah, and
that right,
several
Sharon?
attendees. So
Yes.
let's pull that off the consent and
Go
we've
back to
approved item number
number
1
2.
and we correct.
Okay, going back to number 2, Jeff, you had a couple of questions and a comment. Oh, I'm sorry, Steve. Since we're pointed off, Steve, give us a very, very condensed staff report of this.
I can do that.
Thank you.
Excuse me as I. Can everybody, is my presentation up on the screen?
It
Can
is.
people read that? Great. Well, thank you, Chair Paul and board members. This is I wanted to provide a little bit of update of where we were the last time we met on this project, the 800 Mission project, which we know is at the corner of Lincoln and Mission. On June 8th, the board unanimously recommended approval of the new Aegis Living San Rafael project, subject to the review of these 3 final details. And those were provide additional step back of the upper story along the Mission Avenue elevation. Update the landscape plan to show the proposed landscaping at all common areas, including patios and terraces. And the applicant was encouraged to explore providing greater articulation to the north elevation to help break up perceived visual bulk. Project revisions that were incorporated after the board made those comments and prior to the Planning Commission review included a majority of the residential rooms on the upper story were set back 8 feet from the building edge to create private terraces. This is in addition to the previous removal of 2 residential rooms up on the upper floor, which stepped back from the dome tower feature and created another common outdoor terrace area on the 5th floor. Another revision was that the 5th floor outdoor terrace was proposed planters and plantings from the project plant palette to help create a cohesive landscape design. Third, revisions that included the upper story along the north elevation now includes a belly band trim and distinctive exterior color and additional windows on the upper story. Bless you. This is in addition to the 3-story architectural metal trellis that was on the previous reiteration that the board saw, which also matches a similar design feature that is also on the west elevation. On October 12th, last month, the project received approval by the Planning Commission. And staff actually included several slides that kind of showed where this progression went. Thought it might be helpful. It's also in staff report as well. What I'm showing right now is the elevation if you were standing on the east side of the Lincoln Mission Avenue elevation, or even in the turn lane maybe. And this includes the step back that you can see up on the Mission Avenue along this elevation here. And also there is a step back around the tower element as too. This is what the reiteration that the board saw at their last June 8th. This is what the elevations look like. As you can see, the upper story was more crowded along the building edge along Mission. Floor plan quickly shows that it shows as I mentioned, this 8-foot setback from the building edge. So you're seeing this in plan view now, and this is in addition to the previous step back, which was about a 2-foot setback from the building's edge previously. So now the majority of the units on the upper floor along Mission are 8 feet. And then of course you still have the new outdoor patio terrace that was created around the tower element. Excuse me. This also shows a little bit about the landscaping. Not of the entire landscape plan. This is just showing some of the new landscape areas that were going to be created within this new outdoor patio terrace on the 5th floor. Landscape planters have been added along the edge of the building, not only along, you can see it along Lincoln, but also most of it is along the—
Steve, the image isn't right. We're not seeing landscape here.
No, what I'm showing, these are landscape planters. I apologize. These are where the landscaping would be added. I didn't include landscape plans. I didn't think I had enough room. I'll let the project applicants discuss specific landscaping with you. As you can see, this was the previous reiteration without any planters along the upper floor. And this shows where the upper story, particularly on the north elevation, how it's changed. Here's the belly band that went across the upper stories. Windows were added, new windows, and also a distinctive darker, still light tan exterior color that differentiates the upper story from the rest of the building. And this is the image that the board last saw of the north elevation. As you can see, there is no belly band, there's no distinctive color, and there's no windows. So this feature was actually reduced in size a little bit to allow for these additional articulation to be placed on this north elevation. That essentially concludes staff's quick presentation on the design changes that were implemented prior to the adoption or approval by the Planning Commission of the project. Does anybody from the board have any questions of staff?
I have one quick question. When did the color of the building change from the tan colors, in day one, to the sort of gray color that's proposed now?
I believe that is actually, it's difficult to get an accurate representation on even color perspectives. I believe the color has not changed, but I will ask that the applicant make a direct comment regarding that.
Thank you.
And Jeff, you had the question, you had the
Oh,
questions to
goodness.
begin with, right?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions for the landscape architect if he's here.
Is the landscape architect here?
The landscape architect is not here. This is Brian Ziegler from Aegis.
Ah.
Okay, I'll ask him anyway. And you may not be able to answer them, but I may have some questions on the 5th floor landscaping. One of the labels is Gel Mar, and that's not in your plant key. So I'm curious if that was supposed to be Gel Sem, which is Carolina Jasmine. Is there any chance you know the answer to that?
I do not.
And then in kind of an extension of that, I was wondering, those are all vines that are on the 5th floor. I was curious to know whether or not the intention is to let the vines drape down the facade of the building. And
I know the
then-
idea is the plants on top want to be visible from the lower, from the street level. I'm not the landscape architect. I don't know if vines were what they selected, but they wanted to have a little bit of, they wanted the plants to project above the railing a little bit so you could see them from the lower levels and give some color in that up there.
Right, there's a pretty good chance they're gonna be going down the facade of the building too. I'm not opposed to that. I'm just wondering if that was the intent. And then the other thing is not knowing what Gel Mar is exactly. If it is the Carolina Jasmine, I wasn't sure if you're aware that the leaves are poisonous, and some people believe the flowers are also poisonous, and that may not make that the most appropriate plant at that location. So that
No,
one
I appreciate the comment. We'll definitely check on that. We as a practice do not put in plants that are poisonous, and we'll go back and check that for sure, and make sure that's not the case, that we're putting in something that would be unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, not a big deal, but you should probably be aware of that.
No, I appreciate it.
And then that's the end of my questions. And at some point I have a comment when it's appropriate.
Are there any other questions of staff or the applicant from the board? And there's still no public comments, right, Leslie?
That is correct, that you can open,
Okay.
we can open the public comment on this if you like.
But there was none, right?
There was no one wishing to pull it off the consent calendar.
Oh, I see. That was just about pulling it off. Is there any people in the public that wish to ask questions or comments about this project? That would be the next thing.
If you wish to comment on the final design revisions of 800 Mission, please raise your hand. Please press *9 if you are phoning in, and please use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of the screen if you're not phoning in. And no one has their hand raised.
Okay, so then we'll take it back to we'll close the public comment, and we'll take it back to the board for any other comments from the board. And Jeff, you said you had a comment to begin with.
Yeah, just one. The planting plan shows a couple of palms on their planting plan, and just to kind of revisit from our last meeting that MMWD no longer allows palms to be planted. So you're gonna have to go, that plant's gonna have to be changed out. So that's my comments.
Any other comments from the board? Okay. Then Leslie, what do we need? We need to vote on this?
There is actually no vote. It was really at your last meeting when you recommended approval, you asked us to see the revisions prior to building permit. So this is more of a courtesy review to show you the revisions and hope it meets your expectations and to get further information about landscaping.
Well, let me ask you this then, Leslie. What if it didn't meet our expectations? Then what do we do?
That's a really good question. I think what we would like you to do is state what your preference is and have you work, with the project planner, have the applicants work with the project planner to make sure that that was met before it goes to the submitted for design for building permit. And I think also if you had serious concerns, you can have like the project planner check in with you as chair to, double check.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
The fact that we pulled it off the agenda and off the consent calendar, do we have to vote again?
That's what I
No.
thought. I thought as soon as it came off consent, it becomes an actionable item
Yeah.
on our part. But maybe
That's
I'm
what I
wrong.
believe,
So
because I mean, we have to, if it's on the consent calendar, we still are voting on it. We're still,
Yeah.
we're still
Historically, we
basically
voted
saying we
for it.
consent to what it is as presented. And if we're then pulling it off the consent calendar.
Yeah, I agree with,
no,
So
we
I'm
have
going to ask the city attorney,
no, I
but
agree
I want
with
to remind
Larry.
you that
Even when it's on the consent, we've always voted.
right. So we're going to refer to the
E-
city attorney. So you
even in
already gave
sorry.
a recommendation for approval and you just wanted to see it before building permit. So I think Rob, city attorney Epstein could answer that question.
So
I do not want to be improper.
And I'm sorry, Leslie, could you just enunciate for me one more time how this was agendized for the consent agenda?
How it was
I don't have the
agendized.
agenda open in front of me. I apologize.
Yes. So it lists the project and the recommended action is review updated design.
Right. So the action was not to take a vote. It was simply to conduct a review. So I would agree with Leslie that, on your consent agenda, you had the opportunity to say, if you hadn't pulled it from the consent agenda, that would have signified that everyone on the board had reviewed the plans and had no comments that they wished to make on them. Instead, the matter was pulled. Comments have been made. The way that the action or the item was agendized does not call for action. And so I would agree with staff. There's no requirement for a vote. You're not being asked to approve the item. You already approved it. And I also agree with her suggestion that if there is a wish for there to be a follow-up regarding the comments that were raised about the landscape plan, I think the simplest method would be to direct that staff come back with the chair, if the chair is willing, to confirm that the comments have been followed to their conclusion.
I think, that it's starting to sound like there's a little disconnect though with prior conduct at the DRB. I've been on the DRB a long time.
And I've scarcely attended any of your meetings, so please help me, Chair Paul.
Yeah. The thing is that when it goes to the planning commission and it gets approved, but they send it back to the design review board, it's usually because there are some design issues that still need to be resolved. And when we first see the project, we usually try to get everything resolved before we give it its blessing, our blessing, and send it on to the planning commission so that it doesn't come back to us. Lately, we have been trying, I think, to expedite some of the process by getting it to the planning commission ahead of, as quickly as possible, and yet realizing that there may be some things that still needed to be done. This particular, for example, we asked for an additional setback on the top floor, and they went from a 2-foot setback to an 8-foot setback, which seems reasonable. What if they had gone from a 2-foot setback to a 3-foot setback or a 4-foot setback, and it did not seem reasonable? Then what would we be expected to do? Comment and say, well, we don't think that they addressed the situation, but if we're not voting on it, then it's just going to go on to the building permit process. That hasn't been in the past. What's happened is when it's come back from the planning commission, it really kind of went through a truncated design review board review, and then got the approval, if you will, even if it's not a formal vote, it got the approval recommendation of the DRB to then go forward with whatever the design was. And if they didn't address our comments properly, it would be continued to the next meeting when they would do that. So this is a little different now.
So may I provide some feedback, and I don't know if this will
Sure.
help at all, but you know, often when we have the DRB weigh in on a design, we are working with the applicant to make sure that when the design comes back, it's a design that's addressing your concerns. And in this situation, had they come back with a 2-foot step back and not changed, we would not likely have taken it to the planning commission. We would have likely brought it back because you gave some pretty clear direction that what the expectation was for that step back to be applied to the design. And so in taking your input, staff felt that the applicant had responded to your design review board's request and recommendation, and therefore moved it on to the planning commission with the understanding that you would get to see it again, just to kind of get a, you know, feel like, you know, you had get an opportunity to review the final outcome. But again, had the applicant brought us a design that was unchanged, it would have likely come back to you before going to the planning commission.
Well, I understand that, Ally, but another example would be, we asked for some articulation on the north elevation. And that becomes a much more amorphous term. What's enough articulation? And if staff would have felt that what they had presented was enough articulation to then bring it back to us, and we did not feel that it was enough articulation, then what do? See, the idea is that if staff is actually acting as an intermediary in this process, and then basically looking to DRB just as a review and say, well, okay, that's it. Why bother to come back to the DRB if we're not going to do anything about it? If we're not going to vote on it, and we're not going to, you know, ask any more changes, then it's not fair to anyone, I don't think.
But isn't that the action that we took? We took it off the agenda item so that we could comment on it again.
Well, yes, but in this particular case, it was just because Jeff had a couple of questions. And his comment, excuse me, his comment was basically more informational, that he felt that there was a plant identified that was not the best selection of the plant, but he was not asking for a lot more landscaping or this or that.
Well, I'm thinking more along the lines of your comment. What if they'd moved that wall back a foot? And obviously that wasn't enough for any of us.
Well, no,
but we took it off the agenda item, and we would go back to the client and say, no, this is unacceptable. We wanted more of a, you know, separation of spaces.
So may I make a comment?
Yes, Rob.
Please. So if I'm following the narrative, what it sounds like is that it came back to you because both planning commission and staff desired to hear from the DRB to confirm that the you know, concerns that were raised were reviewed, and that the changes that were made, hopefully consistent with the concerns, met the approval of the DRB. Do I have that part right?
I believe so.
No,
Okay.
no, actually, that's not correct. When this came to the DRB in August, it was recommended approval with the condition that it comes back to DRB with these recommendations being implemented into the design after planning commission approval.
Okay.
So in this case, Planning Commission did not request it come back to DRB. It was part of DRB's approval, recommendation of approval.
Okay,
of the
that's
project.
helpful. So, but either way, it seems to me, if the projects come back now for the DRB to review it, and let's assume that the DRB felt very negatively about whatever it was, some of the hypotheticals that have just been raised. I think it would be important to express that. It really, given that it's an advisory board, it seems to me it wouldn't be that important whether it was expressed in comments or somebody can make a motion and say, I want to make a motion that we think this stinks, or whatever the recommended action is. And then it wouldn't be necessary, frankly, to do anything further. But I think staff would have to, along with conferring with city manager, chair of the planning commission, et cetera, strongly consider whether the matter needed to return to planning commission for further consideration of the DRB's comments. I think that's the way it would and should play out.
Jeff, you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, I've been on the board for 20 years now, and historically, when something comes back on consent, if it doesn't come off consent, that means there aren't any questions, there's no staff report, there's no applicant presentation. But we've always voted, or we voted on a recommendation to accept the changes that were in.
And that's fine. I think if you want to take a vote on this item, I have no objection to it.
I mean, that's what we've been doing for 20 years.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, we oftentimes at the city council will have a motion to receive the report, motion to accept the recommendation. I mean, if somebody wants to make that motion and vote on it, that's fine.
Well, I think the other thing that Leslie mentioned was that it was coming back to the DRB as a condition of the Planning Commission approval. And it seems like that then provides the nexus that as a condition of the Planning Commission approval, the design changes have to satisfy the DRB.
Agreed.
How that satisfaction is presented in a vote or a recommendation or whatever is up for discussion. But I guess what I'm saying is if the presentation tonight did not satisfy us, we would then ask them to come back again and take another stab at it before we would actually recommend it go further. And that means that would, I guess they could still apply for a building permit, but that building permit approval would be held up until they satisfied whatever changes we asked for.
I think that's correct. And hearing the full narrative, I would just suggest if there's a board member who wishes to do so, that a motion be made to approve, with comments if there are some comments that need to be added about the poisonous plants or whatever. And if that receives a second and a majority vote, then we're okay. And if it doesn't, then I think Chair Paul's comments are apt. Then there'd be a need to further consider the comments that were made and for the applicant to make consider more changes and come back again. Is that clear?
I think we're also voting or making a recommendation to show that the changes that came back to us tonight met the threshold that we were looking for at the last meeting.
Agreed.
Great, yeah, right. So with that discussion, are there any other comments from the board on this project? Seeing none, it sounds like then what we should do is just, I guess, recommend that these changes have been acceptable with the condition that Jeff added, or the comment that Jeff added, that any poisonous plants should be re-examined and changed. Is that correct, Jeff? Am I saying that correctly?
And that the palm tree has to have a different
right,
tree.
yeah, because of the MMWD thing.
So
that way it gets more memorialized that we comment on that so that when it goes through the building permit process, that there are no palm trees there and there are no poisonous plants on them.
I'm ready to make a motion.
Go right ahead.
I recommend we approve this project with 2 small changes. One, come up with a replacement plan for the poisonous vine that I believe is on the 5th floor, and that the palm tree that's no longer allowed by MMWD is replaced.
Is there a
I
second?
apologize. I need to,
Leslie,
I'm having a little issue here. Yes.
procedurally?
DRB recommends approval to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission has approved this project. It has an entitlement with conditions. The condition is that it goes back to design review for final review of the revisions requested. We cannot add conditions to the entitlement, and I guess I'm stating that, but we have the attorney in the room. But I'm just having a level of discomfort with this. It has been approved. It is entitled. It is going back, and obviously we're going to have to really discuss this project for final design review in the future, so we don't so we have a clear idea, all of us, what we are doing. But I'm having, at no time does DRB approve a project, they recommend approval. And so that's
Right.
where I'm having a little disconnect here.
Yeah, I don't have any objection to the motion. And really, I think because the Planning Commission, and again, I want to make sure I have the narrative properly. Did the Planning Commission request that it go back to DRB? No.
No, that was the DRB who requested it.
DRB requested that it go back to DRB. Well, then I think what the motion is really by way of a comment. I think it's correct that given the way this went from DRB to Planning Commission, got entitled and then came back again, the applicant conceivably could ignore the comments that are being made by this board. It would seem kind of silly to plant poisonous plants when the applicant just said that they don't wish to do that. And it would be sort of silly to plant a palm tree that the water district doesn't allow. And so I think they'll probably heed to the suggestions that Member Kent made. But I think what we're hearing is a DRB motion to approve the changes with these additional comments. I think staff's correct that it won't be binding on the applicant because the application's already entitled. And so it may feel a little unsatisfactory, but I think what it feels like to me is that it was useful because we got Board Member Kent's comments, which the applicant never otherwise would have heard. And it sounds like they're going to be followed. So
should we make a motion? Should we make a motion that the applicant just consider these comments and work with staff towards a resolution when they file for their building permit and be done with it?
Sure,
but do we not even do that?
It won't be a condition.
Doesn't sound like we need to make a motion then. I think at this point, this project is entitled to whatever they got from the Planning Commission. And I think what it says to me is that we are now erring in our procedures if we send a project on to the Planning Commission before we fully are accepting of the design. Because once it goes to the Planning Commission, if it comes back to us, we have no say in it.
Agreed.
So
Are we not?
I think that in the future, what we have done in the past, I think, is tried to get it to the Planning Commission because we felt that there are some overriding issues that are not in the purview of the design review board that needed to go to the Planning Commission to be worked out, and then it could come back for the final design touch-ups, which we're now finding, at least in this particular project, the final design touch-ups, if they came back and had no changes whatsoever to our comments, we would not have anything to say about it. Is that correct, Rob? They are fully entitled now to what they had.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's almost like we should have a joint session on large projects like this that have huge planning commission issues. It's
Well,
something we should
that-
all kick around, staff and the city attorney and this board and the other board. This should all just be, we should all sit back and examine procedurally what's most efficient. I know the applicant in this case, they really wanted to, not have this elongated so much when we were only concerned with a few minor issues. But to your point, Larry, we better get all the minor issues fixed before it goes on.
That's what it sounded like. And it has not been like that before.
Correct.
I mean, like Jeff and I have been on this board for a long time.
And-
And in the past, it has come back to the DRB routinely for design changes that were relatively minor, but they went to the planning commission first because they needed to have the bigger issues resolved.
And then do those projects go back to planning commission?
That I don't think so. I think that the planning commission gives them the entitlements to build what is going on, and then it comes back to the design review board to finish the design review process before it goes to the final construction drawings that be submitted to the building department. In
I
the
would say
past,
that
that's the
it's
way.
likely that you saw it again and that you likely accepted the report or accepted the presentation, but not taken action in the form of adding conditions of approval, because there would be no way for us to add any conditions of approval to the entitlement.
Right.
Well, I mean,
Well, I think the entitlement, Ally,
excuse
is. Go ahead,
excuse
Jeff.
me. A couple of things. I mean, why is this coming back to us at all if we're not going to recommend approval on the changes? The other thing, the plant that's on the other thing is the plant that's on the 5th floor. We're seeing this plant for the very first time because this is part of the 5th floor changes.
So I think what the application is revealing is that Board Member Summers' suggestion that this might be a good time to review these procedures offline with staff, with Planning Commission, and talk about, as he points out, some of these larger applications, what would be the most efficient way to do it and the most useful for the applicant and the community, and also for the board and the Planning Commission, so we're not spinning our wheels. So we're glad to work with staff and with the board and commission to look at that and see how to approach it in the future.
Good.
I'm going to just interrupt to say one thing, which is my apologies to everyone, because I want to make sure, and I do think that your comments were valuable, but I want to make sure that we all are on the same page. So we will definitely have meetings before to kind of get resolution on this, so that we all know what the action is and what that means as the project progresses. So we'll have that. I will have that information for you before your next DRB meeting.
It would also be helpful, Leslie, if you went back historically a few years and see how it has gone in the past on some of these projects that have been a little more, either major impacts or just controversial, as to whether they've gone from the DRB to the Planning Commission and come back again, and how that has been handled. Because we don't want to set too many precedents here. All right, having discussed this completely, I don't think there's any further, we don't need to take a vote, right? We don't need to approve it. Well, I think we're basically just reviewing it. We've submitted our comments to the applicant, and the applicant hopefully will incorporate those comments into their final design. Is that correct, or do we still need to take some formal or informal action?
In my view, that's fine, or you could take a vote. Either is fine. You could, it won't have a binding effect for the reasons we talked about earlier, but if you want to vote as an expression of your opinions as a board, I think that would be fine.
Well, then let me ask if anyone wants to make a motion to have a vote. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Very good.
I mean, like I said before, historically, we've always voted. There's no reason for it to come back to there's no reason for us to have it come back to us if we're not going to make a recommendation. Otherwise, what's the point?
Well, would you like to make a motion then, Jeff?
I made one already.
Okay, would anyone like to second that motion?
And could you repeat it? I apologize. There was a lot of conversation between the motion and now.
It was like a half an hour ago. I'll see if I can remember.
Thank you.
Aren't we recording this meeting?
We are, but I'm taking notes. Apologies.
I recommend that we approve this project as submitted with this couple small landscape changes. Take a look at the poisonous plant, and they can't use the palm tree even if they wanted to per MMWD.
Is there a second to that motion?
Sure, I will second it.
Any discussion on that motion? I have one. Just to add fuel to the fire, Jeff, would that be fair to ask an applicant that has already submitted prior to the MMWD that they take out the palm trees?
I'm not sure at this point if MMWD has reviewed this plan, and if they haven't, it won't not be approved as submitted.
They wouldn't get a permit with them.
Correct.
Even though they've submitted prior to their thing?
They haven't submitted for a building permit yet, Larry.
Yeah, but don't they have some entitlements?
Not from a building permit. That's a whole different process.
If the planning commission entitled them with palm trees, wouldn't they have that entitlement?
Not from a building permit stand. That'd
What
be
would
like
Rob say
saying
on that?
it's like approving you can build a house out of flammable material in a WUI zone. Fire department's never gonna let. Same thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna just weigh in there. The planning commission doesn't approve the particulars of any specific landscape. It does also have to be approved by the Marin Water District when they submit for the building permit for the water connection. So.
Can we make a motion that isn't specific? We approve the project on conditions that you've heard here tonight and let it go at that.
Yep.
Well,
I'll second that.
Well, wait. We have to go back to the motion maker. Jeff, would you accept that change in the motion, that it just be approved?
If that allows us to go to bed sometime tonight, I'd be happy to support that.
Then Stuart, would you accept that as a second?
I second.
All right, any further discussion on the motion? Seeing none.
Aye.
We have to have a roll call.
Oh.
Yep. Okay, so the motion was Board Member Kent, seconded by Board Member Summers. Board Member Blaney.
Aye.
Board Member Kent.
Aye.
Board Member Kowalski.
Aye.
Board Member Summers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reggie is absent, and Chair Paul.
Aye. So the motion carries again, 5-1. Absent, 5-0-1. Thank you all for enduring this.
Thank you for your patience with the city attorney. I thought there was going to be a motion to have the city attorney not come to any more DRB meetings. So thank you for not making that motion.
Yeah, this is all your fault, clearly.
I'm used to it. They always blame it on me.
I
So
think
feel free.
are you going to stick around, Rob?
Oh yeah, I want to be
Okay.
around for the Fremont item.
For the main
So
event?
I'm waiting for that.
Okay, well then let's go on to the third item, which is 5254 Fremont Marquard. I've already described that. Are there any, this is still on the consent calendar. Item number 3.
You guys took it off.
Oh, we did take it off. Right, okay. That was such a long time ago. All right, then we'll ask for again, a condensed staff report from
Dave Hogan,
Yes. I didn't see Dave.
I'd like
here.
to introduce Dave Hogan, which
There he
is one
is.
of our
Hi, Dave.
contract planners who works for the M Group. With that, just take it away, Dave.
Thank you, Leslie. Let me go to my my screen here and we'll pull this up. And then I'll go to this. There we are. Good evening, board members. I'm Dave Hogan. I'm a contract planner, and this is one of my 2 projects with the city. This is for the Fremont Marquardt residential project. It's coming back to the board because of a referral from the Planning Commission. This was considered by a subcommittee of the DRB in October of 2020. In September, there was a Planning Commission public hearing, and the Planning Commission, several members wanted the DRB to weigh into whether or not Coast Redwood should be planted as part of the landscape plan. I'll skip that. This is where the project is located. This gray blob here is the existing house, and this is the garage. It's 2 lots. And the proposal is to reorient it to make 1 lot front on Fremont and 1 on Marquardt. This is the existing residence that would be remodeled. This is the new residence. The green blobs are the location of the redwoods on site. So the DRB subcommittee's comment was that they felt the lot line adjustment and site design made effective use of the site. They recommended replacing the proposed understory tree species and requested that additional landscaping be placed on the upper lot. And as you can see, the applicant has done just that. All on the original plan, all of the landscaping, there was no landscaping on the upper lot. All what you see here now is what they've added. They also replaced the tree species with something a little more appropriate and a little less problematic. So to keep this very quick, the commission requested that the applicant's arborist weigh in on this. His professional opinion was that recommended that Coast Redwoods not be planted as part of the landscaping plan for the following reasons. The first, that Coast Redwoods, as we all know, grow very large. And if you planted more than 1 or 2, there wouldn't be room on the site for anything else. Also, the proposed planting of what they described as an understory tree, i.e. the Western hazelnut, creates a more naturalistic appearance, because in a lot of those areas, you do end up with understory trees, and the Western hazelnut is one of those. And the arborist also noted that the Coast Redwoods would require more water for irrigation during their early years than would be allowed by the city's water efficient irrigation ordinance. And this concludes my very brief staff report with the referral of the Planning Commission to the Design Review Board. And at this point, I'm available to answer any questions.
I have one.
Yes, sir.
And the landscape architect actually wasn't opposed to planting Coast Redwoods. He just said only 1 or 2 would be appropriately planted. So I think I'd just like to clarify that comment.
Yeah, he was asked for a recommendation in terms of adding Coast Redwoods onto the site.
Right.
And
that's specifically it says Coast Redwoods grow so large that only 1 or 2 could be appropriately be planted.
Yes.
So he's really not saying 0. He's saying limit the number. I just want to make that perfectly clear.
Thank you.
Any other questions to staff?
That's all I had.
Anybody else have a question?
I have a question. I have a question. Are we only talking about the trees now? We're not talking about the planning or any of the architectural things, right? We're just talking about the trees at this time. Yes.
Yes, board member. That's the item today. The DRB subcommittee did already weigh in on the architecture. The architecture of the upper building isn't changing, though the building is changing a little bit. The lower building is what I would describe as a mountain cabin architecture that seemed to be appropriate for the hillside location.
Okay, I have questions about other things, so I don't have any issue. I have an issue taking out 9 redwood trees or whatever they're taking out. And they say they're not going to replace all of them. They're supposed to replace them 3 for 1. But that is not the issue we're talking about now.
The referral from the Planning Commission is, should the landscape plan be modified to add coast redwoods into the landscape palette? That's the referral from the Planning Commission back to the Design Review Board.
So
And
this project will be built if we say yes at this time. This project goes on.
based upon the DRB's recommendation, the project will be scheduled for the City Council for approval. And based upon the recommendation of the board, we will be conditioning or making, excuse me, sorry, I'm about to sneeze, my apologies. Based upon the recommendation of the Design Review Board, we would condition the landscape plan to be modified to incorporate redwood trees if that was the recommendation of the board.
Chair Paul, could you answer a question for me?
Sure.
Is the architecture approved then or pre-approved by the board, and that's not up for discussion? Is that correct?
Already been approved.
It's already been approved?
The way I understand it, it has been approved by a subcommittee of the Design Review Board last year during the pandemic, when the full board was not able to meet. And then it went to the Planning Commission, and they have brought it back. They've asked us to opine on the appropriateness of these a few landscaping issues here.
And just a correction of language, the Design Review Subcommittee didn't approve anything. We made a recommendation and recommendations to the Planning Commission. The Planning Commission approved it. And then they sent it back to us to talk about these trees.
And that's it. We're not talking about anything else.
Correct.
Technically, the Design Review Board is not an approval body. We only recommend approval of a design that is done, the actual approval is done by the Planning Commission.
And the Planning Commission approved this 7-0. They only kicked it back to us to discuss the appropriateness of adding redwood trees to the site.
That is correct.
I'd like to, yeah.
Could I get
Dave,
my thought on in the record? I don't like taking out 9 redwood trees. Some of them have a
Hold on
3-foot
a second,
diameter.
Sharon. You can comment on that when we actually bring the comments to the board.
Okay, sorry.
Right now, we're just asking for questions of
Okay.
staff, and then we're going to have an applicant presentation, and then we'll put it back to the board, and then you can say whatever you want to say, and it will go into the public record.
Okay.
Okay.
Leslie,
I
was
would like
there
to
a
clarify one
time-
thing if I may. Oh, sorry. This project is has an exception that requires City Council approval. So Dave Hogan did mention that, but I want to just say that again, because this is now just slightly different from the one we just heard. So there is more of an opportunity for your comments to be forwarded to City Council, because it's going to go to City Council for hearing. It's not a new recommendation as per before, that has been given, but there is opportunity if more of an op-ed, just so you're aware, in addition to landscaping, if there's other comments that you'd like to forward to the council. Thank you.
Okay.
Director Giudice.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if this was the time that you were hoping to hear from our city attorney.
Rob, do you have anything?
Thank you.
I'm not sure. Is there a question for me?
Rob, I wasn't sure if this was the time that you were going to be providing some input. I just wanted to make sure.
Oh, this is on the Fremont matter?
Yes.
We're ready
Yes,
to call
sir, it
that.
is.
As I suggested earlier today in emails to staff, I want the staff report to be provided. And at the conclusion of the staff report, I would like to make a couple of comments before the staff calls for questions from the design review board.
Well, we're at that point now. We've had the staff report.
Okay. I'm sorry. I missed the narrative again. My attention
went to dinner, right?
No, well, there's a very exciting Warriors game going on now.
Oh,
I'm trying to watch with one
oh,
eye. It
that's
actually was
excusable.
already played, and I'm catching it in little snatches. So here's what I would like to say about the communications that we've received from Ms. DeWitt, petition, et cetera, all of which is focused on board member Summers and a suggestion that there's some basis for his disqualification on the ground of pre-existing bias. So a few comments to be made by your city attorney. First, as was just mentioned a few moments ago by Chair Paul, the design review board is an advisory board. It is not technically a quasi-adjudicative body like the Planning Commission or the City Council that approves projects. It makes recommendations only. And so all of the law on the subject, frankly, relates to quasi-adjudicative or quasi-adjudicatory bodies. But we apply the law here because we want to be consistent about providing due process and a fair hearing on all of our boards and commissions, regardless of their function. And so we would advise board members to act consistently with that law that applies to those types of bodies. I just wanted to make that preliminary comment. Now turning to the law and the way that it's analyzed when anyone suggests that someone has a basis for disqualification. There's the Political Reform Act, which is not implicated here. So far as I'm aware, no one's making any suggestion that any board member, including Mr. Summers, has some sort of an economic or financial interest in the item. But instead, the suggestion is being made that because of comments that Mr. Summers has made about the Hillside Design Guidelines, in a general, as I understand it, in a general way, not applicable to this project, that somehow he has a pre-existing bias that would call for his disqualification. So hang on one moment, because I want to look at some notes here, and I'm not coming up with a page that I wanted on my screen. I got a lot of documents open. Shoot. Well, it doesn't always work that way. Oh, here it is. So, and Ms. Goldfein actually communicated with Ms. DeWitt on this subject earlier today and cited some law to her. The law is that someone who has a pre-existing bias that makes them unable to be a fair hearing officer would be disqualified. And the question is whether there's an unacceptable probability of actual bias. That's the legal standard, whether there's an unacceptable probability of actual bias. And when I've been asked a similar question before by council members, by planning commission members, my advice is always the same. It really calls upon the member to consider the allegation that's being made and decide for himself or herself whether they believe that, based on whatever opinions they have or are alleged to have on the matter, they are able to be fair and unbiased. No one can look into another person's heart or mind and tell that. It's up to the individual member to make that determination for himself or herself, and then my advice also is to enunciate on the record the members' basis for the decision one way or the other. I've had council members say, you know, I'm going to sit this one out because, you know, for various reasons. I know the person who's involved, whatever, I don't feel comfortable with it. I'm going to sit it out. Or conversely, it's been asserted that I can't be a fair hearing officer. I can't be unbiased. And that's wrong. I can be, and here's why. And I've had those explanations on the record as well. I have conferred about this matter with member Summers and questioned him carefully about it. And in my judgment, he is able to be a fair decision maker here. And the suggestions made to the contrary are inaccurate. I invite him to explain why, because I think that it would be useful for this record for that to be made clear. But for the comfort of the board and hopefully the community, I know, although I've been doing this long enough to know that, you know, sometimes people will never be persuaded off of their position. Your city attorney is comfortable with Mr. Summers' participation in the item based on the information that I gained from him, which I encourage him to state at this time before the board asks any questions of staff. And then if there are questions about my advice, then I would invite, well, actually, let me ask that first. Does anyone on the board have any questions about anything I just said?
I do.
Chair Paul.
One of the things I remember from my ethics training that we have to do every 2 years is that concerning the potential conflicts of interest, although they may be really relatively limited to your financial conflicts of interest, it was suggested that if even there's an appearance of a conflict of interest, that a party should recuse themselves from a matter so as to be very conservative in the presentation to the public, so the public is not how do I want to say it?
We certainly want public confidence in our decisions.
Confidence,
I think
yes.
That's what Chair Paul's referencing.
Yes.
I would suggest to you, Chair Paul, that particular advice specifically relates to Political Reform Act conflicts and alleged conflicts of interest that relate to economic or financial interests. And so those, because they involve money, do elicit that sort of advice from attorneys and experts in ethics that, hey, if someone's claiming you have a financial interest, even if technically you don't fall within the prescriptions of the Political Reform Act, you know, you might consider taking a pass on participating in it because of that appearance of impropriety, financial impropriety, like you said. I do not agree that in a situation where someone's saying, well, someone's got a pre-existing opinion, they have pre-existing bias because, you know, they stated public opinions on a subject like, you know, Mr. Summers is asserted to have done here. That advice that you heard at your ethics training, I believe, does not apply to this sort of assertion, because anybody could say at any time about any council member, planning commission member, board member, and then if we were to follow that concept, we'd say, oh no, you know, nobody ought to vote because people are casting about these allegations. And so I go back to what I was saying a few moments ago. This board it consists of people who, you know, we've heard Mr. Kent has been doing it for 20 years. I know Mr. Summers for a long time. And even people who haven't been doing it as long, they're carefully vetted by the council. They're chosen for their expertise, wisdom, and reputation within the community. And, you know, for those reasons, the city vests confidence in the ability of each board member to make those determinations for himself or herself as to whether they feel on an individual item that they should participate, because despite the assertions that they're biased, or, on an individual case, they should not. And I would trust any member of this board in a situation where he or she felt that, for whatever reason, not a political Reform Act conflict, but some assertion of bias that they felt they really shouldn't participate, that they would say, I'm not going to vote on this one. Here, based again on my discussions with Board Member Summers, as I think he'll describe in more detail, there isn't bias. There are opinions as to this particular project. There may be opinions about the regulations and the guidelines that we have that have been around for a long time. But the question isn't, what his personal feelings about the rules might be. The question is whether he's able to apply the rules with his fellow board members in an unbiased fashion. And I think, as he'll describe his own history on hillside design, applications would suggest his ability to do so. But I don't wish to speak for him. But I hope that answers your question, Mr. Paul.
It does. Thank you.
Very well. And so I would encourage Mr. Summers to speak at this time. Then if there are any further questions for me, I'd be glad to take them. And then following that would be the time for any additional board member questions to staff about the item. Thank you for your patience with the city attorney.
Thank you, Rob. Stuart.
Yeah, thanks, Rob. I wrote a few things down. I'm pretty terrible with a script, so I'll kind of paraphrase. But, I know Victoria, put this petition together, and I respect her ability and her right to do so. To maybe the people that are here that maybe signed it, maybe didn't, I want to let them know a little bit about me. I have lived here my entire life, 54 years. I have spent those 54 years here in the West End. My 91-year-old mother lives 6 blocks away. My sister lives across the street from me. My brother lives 6 blocks away. We are a West End San Rafael family. I've been here my entire life. I care deeply about this part of town. I care deeply about the city of San Rafael. I'm doing this for design review because I want to give back to my community. So before I'm painted into being characterized as someone who wants to mow all the trees down and ruin the town, I want people to know that's who I am and how I feel and why I will never leave the West End. I'm going to spend the rest of my days here. So these accusations or whatever has been levied against me, I think I've got 3 mayors, countless council members over the last 15 years who would agree that I've done a pretty good job at this role. I hope so, certainly on a volunteer basis. So I welcome Victoria's discussion on it. I don't like the way that it's come up. I wish she would have walked into my office, as she's done before, unannounced, to talk to me, and we could hash some of these things out. But here we are. So I do completely agree with her that I take a position that might be different than hers. I do feel there's one provision of our hillside ordinance that I've been on record many times saying, and I'll say it again tonight, that the natural state requirement is antiquated. That doesn't mean the whole ordinance is antiquated. It just means I've got this one piece that bothers me, and that's placing a hard line in the sand on any hillside project that you just can't do X, Y, or Z. No chance for mitigation measures, no chance for thinking outside the box, no chance for good design to work around those issues. So I think that one piece should probably get looked at, as other towns have looked at and changed their definitions. So I would encourage the town as we go on to look at that. There are 10 other items in that hillside ordinance that control a lot of what we're worried about. Step backs, FAR regulations based on slope. I welcome every single one of the other items in there. So I don't particularly like that one, and I've gone on record saying it, but I don't get to decide on it. To get a natural state exception takes an action of the city council. The city councils, I think, in my 15 years has approved a natural state exception twice in 15 years. So to the public again, it's a really hard burden for the applicant. So I've made my feelings clear on it. Evidently, the Planning Commission has approved that exception as part of this project, and we're down to talking about trees. Does that preclude me from being able to rationally look at a hillside project in this town for the foreseeable future? Or if there's a hillside project, I can't rule on it without bias? That's completely inaccurate. I feel like I can judge every project on its merits. And, you know, that's kind of where I feel on that particular issue. So A, to the public, hey guys, I really do care. B, I have a problem with something, but that's why we're here. We judge projects on their merits. We judge. There's been a lot of projects that have come before us with the Hillside Ordinance that have met every rule, including the natural state, checked every box and met all the rules, but they were poorly designed, bad projects. And I know on this board, I've said, I can remember my words, while you've met every rule, you haven't met the intent of the ordinance. And the whole point is intent, not to parse every tiny little square foot or everything. So that's my feeling on it. That's what I have to say. I have no problem stating to anybody that I can make a sound judgment or have any dereliction of my duty and reason for me to step down. I hope that's clear.
Thank you, Stuart.
You got it.
So unless there are any further questions for me on the subject of the allegation of bias, I'll turn it over back to the board to ask any questions they might have of staff.
And if I might jump in just a moment before the board resumes discussion, we do have the project architect, Millard Atterbury, and the applicant's arborist, Gary Balsarak, here also to answer questions that the board may have for them.
Great, thanks. Well, why don't we go to the applicant presentation now, because we've got the staff report. And if the applicants are here, could we have a very brief presentation and being as efficient as possible?
Millard, Gary, which of you would like to speak on this subject? Oh, it looks like Gary would like to speak. Leslie, we need.
Yeah, I'm just promoted him to panelist. If you give him a second. Oh, he's there.
There he is.
Sorry, I did it wrong.
Okay. Gary, you need to unmute yourself.
There you go. Gary, are you with us?
Would you like me to put one of the exhibits back up on the screen for you? Gary, I'm afraid we can't hear you at all.
Can you hear us, Gary? Nod your head.
Oh my.
How about wait? Maybe we should go to Millard first. Let's see if we can hear him.
Millard, is there anything you'd like to contribute?
I'd just like to say good evening, and these the comments that I had were directly related to the trees, and I'm sure there were comments that Gary could speak better on. But the three things I'd like to note are that Gary designed a really good landscape plan with a very strict water budget, and that was noted previously. And so even keeping one more of the trees would significantly alter, would require significant alterations to the current landscape plan. I'd also like to point out that 2 redwoods were preserved as the result of comments from the DRB in November of 2019. We initially were going to be removing 11, but based on that meeting, we did a significant redesign, drawing down the square footage of the Marquard home and preserving 2 more redwoods. And the third point I'd like to point out that I'm sure Gary could speak better to is that redwoods perform much better in groups. And so preserving 1, perhaps 2 trees in the long run would not necessarily save those trees. And that's what I have. So thank you.
Thank you. Do we have Gary back? Gary, are you with us?
He doesn't seem to have audio.
Can he call in on the phone?
Gary, can you call in on the phone? You're able to phone 669-900-9128. And the meeting ID is 835-3174-3214. If you don't mind, I will just share my screen. You can see this, and we'll just give you a minute if you can see the agenda here with the phone number and the meeting ID. And let me see if anyone new called in. If you happen to know, Millard or Dave, what Gary's last four numbers of his phone are, we'll just wait one more second.
Millard probably knows off the top of his head. Let me check to see.
And Millard, could you call Gary?
Yeah.
Maybe, I mean, I don't know if he could even hear.
Yes, I will attempt to call him right now.
Yeah, see, or email him or something, text him. While we're waiting for that, why do we have any questions of the board members for the staff or the applicant? Seeing none, maybe we should open it up for public comment while we're waiting for Gary, and then give Gary a chance to present after, if we can get through to him, because I think Millard kind of summarized what the issues were. So,
And Leslie, the last four digits of his phone number are 8234.
8234. He has not called in yet. I think it would be prudent, based on the number of attendees who probably want to speak, to move forward with the public hearing, but Chair Paul, that would be your decision.
yes, well, it's my decision then. Let's go forward. Let's put the applicant's presentation on hold and go and ask for public comment. So if you're in the public and would like to comment on this project, Leslie will give you the instructions.
Yes, either use the raise a hand icon at the bottom of the screen, or if you are phoning in, please dial *9. The first person is Haley Ballard. Haley, you have 3 minutes.
Hi, I'm Haley. I'm one of the youth leaders of the Sunrise Movement Marin, which is a climate organization that focuses on youth advocating for the climate. And I would like to speak at this meeting because I believe that although I recognize that this commission, that the Design Review Board is only a recommending commission, I would like to point out that I think that the Design Review Board should take into account the full costs of this project, which are not just only economic costs, as I'm sure you guys are all aware, but that this grove of 9 redwood trees has been around for approximately 120 years. And it is providing irreplaceable benefits to our community, such as sequestering carbon from the air, such as drawing in much needed atmospheric moisture in this time of drought, such as scrubbing pollutants from wildfires out of the air. And while I recognize that this issue is highly controversial, I just want to emphasize that I think that this particular grove of 9 trees is irreplaceable, and even incorporating some trees into the landscape plan would not be able to replicate this, especially as these trees, as you guys have mentioned, these trees would require significant water during their early years. It wouldn't be practical. You have mentioned to plant more trees after the construction. So that's why I believe that the Design Review Board should, if possible, adjust their recommendations to try to save these trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Haley.
Next,
Yeah, next up is phone number ending in 8340. You have 3 minutes. Oh, and to unmute yourself, please press *6.
Yes, hello, this is Gary Balstrak. I'm sorry for all the confusion.
Oh, sorry, Gary.
But I've been able to hear everything and see everything.
Gary, hold on a second. We put you on hold for a minute. So did we have someone else in the public that was starting to speak? Leslie or not? Leslie?
Oh, sorry. I was on.
Did we have someone else?
Let's continue with the rest of the public hearing. Yes. So Gary, we'll speak to you after the public hearing. Apologies for that. And I am going to leave you up there though.
Okay.
Thank you.
So thank you. Next up is Bill Carney. Bill Carney, you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. This is Bill Carney with Sustainable San Rafael. This has been a really hard week for our climate. Global leaders in Glasgow have struggled and stumbled to meet the critical target of zero net carbon pollution by the middle of the century. Our own city's target is that carbon sequestration match carbon emissions in 25 years. A goal that was adopted this year along with the climate emergency resolution. You've got the opportunity tonight to advise, comment on preserving a redwood grove that already sequesters an estimated 8 tons of greenhouse gases every year. That's a significant step towards the city's goal of maximizing sequestration. Taken together, these trees already store over 180 tons of carbon. The redwood grove can be preserved simply by following the natural state requirements of the city's hillside ordinance and by reorienting the top 2 floors of the new McCard house and perhaps reconfiguring the guest parking. The aggregate natural state required for these 2 sites is 9,921 square feet. In approving the requested lot line adjustment, the city should maintain this overall requirement while allowing the deficit on the new upper lot to be made up for by increasing the natural state on the lower lot by 724 square feet. That could be accomplished by somewhat reducing the footprint of the building and by reorienting its upper 2 floors to run perpendicular rather than parallel to the street. That orientation would allow the heart of the redwood grove to be retained. That's trees 5 through 11. Alternatively, about half of the additional natural state could also be achieved by potentially allowing the 2 guest parking spaces to utilize the undeveloped portion of the street right of way, essentially treating them as on-street parking spaces without reducing the parking or narrowing the traveled way. So that also would reduce the height of that retaining wall considerably. So with these readily achievable changes, these iconic redwoods and the significant ecological service they provide can be preserved. Thank you for considering these adjustments.
Thank you. Next member of the public.
Next up is, Maren DeGraff. Maren, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you so much. My name is Maren DeGraff and I live at 50 Fremont Road, so I'm very close to the project. I understand that the property owner has a right to develop this lot, and I'm not trying to change that, but I am requesting that the plans be adjusted in such a way that allows for both a new house to be built and for the 9 existing redwood trees to remain as they are. The trees slated for removal are part of a 12-tree grove of redwoods. Due to the shared root system of these trees, removing some of them impacts all of them. The massive root system has tremendous benefit to erosion control and slope stability. Winter storm, we have what amounts to a river that cascades down this hillside. It's my understanding that if we were in Fairfax or Larkspur, these trees would not be allowed to be removed. While removing the trees may technically fall within the currently approved design board rules, I beseech each of you to look at the bigger picture of what is the right thing to do. With all that we know now about our climate emergency, cutting down almost 100-year-old trees and replacing them with new ones is not a sound, responsible decision. Please do the right thing, ask the applicant to revise their design and save these trees. This does not have to be an either-or situation. Let this project be an example of sustainable development instead of environmental destruction. I am not alone in these views. As you've seen in the submitted documents, we have collected almost 700 signatures of individuals that want these trees to be saved. Please listen to our voices. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is Davis Perkins.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
3 minutes.
Hi, folks. Leslie and Larry, thank you for taking my call, and I apologize for jumping the gun earlier. My name is Davis Perkins, and I live at 17 Upper Fremont Drive. I've lived up here for about 18, my wife and I for about 18 years. I'm a retired firefighter paramedic, and I'm also an artist, and I have my studio down in at the Artworks downtown on 4th Street. I too, I'm calling to implore you folks to save these trees. As you know, this is a very unique, very beautiful neighborhood. And this neighborhood is greatly enhanced by this wonderful stand of trees. And like everyone is mentioning, these trees are over 100 years old. And people are certainly more qualified than I to speak to the ecological significance of these trees. And thank you, Haley and Bill, for that information. I just concur that, as we all know, this climate change, this crisis, we have to do everything humanly possible, everything, to prevent any further damage. And again, I just implore you to save these trees. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next up is, phone number 2995. You have 3 minutes. And to unmute, yep, you got it.
Hi, good evening, Victoria DeWitt. I'd like to quote the Planning Commission recommendation because there's a piece missing. I'm reading directly from the minutes of the Planning Commission meeting for this project. Commissioner Mercado moved and Commissioner Lubomirsky seconded the recommendation for the applicant to work with an arborist to look into the possibility of retaining the redwood trees on site and or replanting them on site as the replacement trees. So even though the arborist responded to the replanting, he did not respond to the retaining the redwood trees. And that's what everyone's talking about, is retaining these trees. I also have a copy of the plans, the prior plans, and even though the applicant reduced the size of the house, they did not reduce the number of mature redwood trees that are being removed. They have always been 9 mature trees. There are still 9 trees. And I also brought up the question of 2 trees next to the 54 Fremont property, which they plan to do a new foundation. And those trees are right next to that house. Those even haven't been addressed by the arborist. And they are being threatened now, which means only 3 of those trees from the 12-tree grove would remain after they do all their work. The other thing is, having the Planning Commission meeting before the DRB finishes their work is totally backwards for hillside design guidelines. There needs to be, the DRB needs to recommend to the Planning Commission, not the other way around. And there's enough interest on this project that I hope the DRB will take all their comments and recommendations, even if it means going back to the Planning Commission before going to the City Council. The other thing I'd like to point out is there were some errors and omissions in the staff report for this project. Specifically, the first and last DRB meeting was on November 19th, 2019. And the consensus comments, one of them was excluded from the staff report tonight. And that comment said, quote, "The board has difficulty supporting the findings for the proposed exceptions to both the natural state and gross building square footage. The applicant is encouraged to reduce the size of the project and or the configurations of the LLA to eliminate the required exceptions." So this board has never approved the exceptions, and the subcommittee is only 2 members. That's not a quorum. The full design review board needs to review and approve the exceptions not only to the natural state, but the setbacks and whatever other exceptions need to be approved. And the staff report has stated that, oh, the size of the lots are so small, they shouldn't have to comply with the natural state exception. Well, in 2007, a prior owner proposed 2 new 3-bedroom homes for these 2 lots, which met all hillside requirements, including the natural state, and also included a fire truck turnaround with the removal of only 1 redwood tree. So it's obviously possible to accommodate 2 houses on these 2 undersized lots that comply with the natural state requirement and minimize tree removal, but would require modifications to the current design. So, and according to the hillside guidelines, the applicant must demonstrate that a diligent effort has been made to retain as many significant trees as possible. I don't think that has happened. And the necessity to remove a significant tree must meet a high bar only for extreme economic hardship. I urge the DRB to send this project back for redesign to comply with the natural state requirement and save the redwood trees. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Dee Faulkner.
Hi, thank you for taking my call, and thank you to everyone who's already commented. My family and I have been living in this neighborhood of the West End neighborhood for 15 years or so, or a little more, and also echo the comments of my fellow community and neighborhood members in urging you to save these redwoods in a way we can. It's just that critical, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Judy Schriebman.
Hi, thank you, Judy Schriebman. And I'm speaking on behalf of the Sierra Club. Occasionally we get more time. Is that something that we do here?
No.
Okay.
3 minutes is the limit.
All right, thanks, Larry. Appreciate that. So on behalf of the Marine Group of the Sierra Club, first of all, I want to echo the comments of Marion DeGraff, Bill Carney, and Victoria DeWitt. We have sent in a letter that's quite extensive. I hope you have all had a chance to read it. Many of the comments you've heard tonight are echoed in our letter. So I'm not going to read my letter to you or our letter to you, but I do want to speak to you from my heart. And that's what I was just thinking of, how many of us have heard this phrase before growing up: do as I say, but not as I do. And how did that make you feel? Because I'm telling you, and you've heard it before, this is the message we're sending our children when we don't take climate change seriously. This is the message we're giving when we cut down trees that do not need to be cut down, when we keep doing business as usual, in spite of the fact that the UN has sent up a red flag, an all hands on deck moment alarm, that every decision we make from here on out has got to count. So you have that kind of decision before you right here today. Will you allow more trees to be cut down that don't need to be? We've seen that there are other plans that are possible that preserve these trees. Is the architect unable to change his design to preserve these trees? I don't believe that. I don't believe the effort has been made to adequately protect these trees by changing the design. And if the rules are requiring you to cut down these important heritage trees, life-sustaining trees, then the rules have got to be changed. And we need to start changing them at this level now. So this group has the power, and I'd say the obligation, to send this project back to the drawing board, to the architect, say, please come up with a plan that protects and preserves this grove of redwood trees, the state tree since 1937. I believe you can condition the plan to keep these trees. I believe that's within your purview. We want to move San Rafael in the direction of being a climate change attenuating tree city, not a business as usual city. We want to implement the directions of San Rafael's climate change action plan to keep trees standing for all of us, for the canopy, for the urban heat island effect, for bringing in the water and attenuating the water and infiltrating the water rather than creating a more drought stressed environment. And I believe the MMWD language says no new planting. Doesn't say water safe, doesn't say this, says no new planting. So new trees take water. Old trees, especially old redwood trees that are 150 years old, are managing to get the water by themselves from the fog and from the rain and do not need extra water. This is the water safe plan.
Thank you, Judy. That's 3 minutes.
Okay, can I ask a question before we go further?
Sure.
And this would be to Judy, but to all, have these comments been addressed to the Planning Commission?
Yes, and but however, we don't believe that they read them.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And we will be bringing them before the city council as well, as I'm sure all the other people will. But this is a place where you can actually make the change and to make the difference that we believe.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Judy. Next, public.
Next up is Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh, you have 3 minutes.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, good. Okay. Hi, Brian Walsh. I'm with the West End Neighborhood Association. And we submitted a letter that we put together on November 8th, 2021, and have not heard a response. So I'm going to summarize the salient points, and you can follow along with me if you have the letter in front of you, please. First issue, we believe that all these issues are important, not just the tree removal, which we wholeheartedly wish to preserve those trees. Number one, landslide issues. The historical evaluation reported, quote, the property has been compromised by historical landsliding. And they reported that's still showing structural damage to the existing house in 54 Fremont. The geotechnical report by Reese was conducted in the field after a 3-year drought in September, when they stated groundwater is beyond the scope of this investigation. We are recommending that you require they do another pit investigation when the ground is saturated, like now, to determine groundwater and landslide potential. And the peer review by Miller Pacific Engineering Group had pointed out many deficiencies in that prior report. And on the Reese Association peer review comment, they agreed to many of these points and said they would re-excavate, do another geotechnical report, and replace the foundation. So if they replace the foundation on 54 Fremont, this is no longer a remodel from my understanding, it's new construction with different guidelines. The drainage issue by Balsark Design, they did a drainage study of 52 Fremont, which is downhill from 54, but they didn't do a drainage studies for 54, which would have an impact on 52 Fremont. And their drainage includes a flow-through planter, but it does not explain what happens when the flow-through planters overflow. Where does this water go? Parking issues. How many cars will be parked off street here? I think it's going to be 6. And how would that be arranged? The ADU, according to Steve at the planning department, there's currently a moratorium on ADUs in certain geographical locations, which includes Fremont. So what is the status of the moratorium now on ADUs in that location? And finally, the West End Neighborhood Association is very concerned that marching forward with this project could set a precedent for future hillside development throughout the county or throughout San Rafael, which is deeply concerning to us. Thank you.
Thank you.
If there is anyone else wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand, either by the raise the hand. Oh, there is one more. AGS, you have 3 minutes to speak.
Okay, hi, my name's Paula Spencer. I'm not a San Rafael resident. I live in San Anselmo. Am I still allowed to speak?
Certainly.
Okay, thank you. So I sent an email to you, but I'll read parts of it now. San Rafael has been designated a Tree City USA community, which implies protection for trees in its borders. And for many reasons, including the following from the Tree City USA website itself, please do not recommend removal of any of the redwoods. Carbon sequestration and the details of that have already been discussed. Stormwater reduction, trees reduce runoff and erosion from stormwater by about 7%. And that also means less pollution and less need to add more stormwater pipes. The air quality is increased because of these trees. Energy use reduction happens because the evaporation from a single large tree can produce the cooling effect of 10 room-sized air conditioners operating 20 hours a day. Then there's the wildlife habitat. All the animals who live there now, you know, they're already getting squeezed at all corners already. They're having a harder and harder time making it in this county, in the eastern half of the county. The quality of life, trees help absorb sound of traffic in urban areas by 40%. Green space, I mean, I know it's on someone's lot, but still we all enjoy it, and it plays a major role in improving our mental and physical health. So I would ask that you please honor and respect the trees, honor the Tree City USA program that San Rafael is a part of, and do your part in helping to save the planet by saving these trees. Every decision matters, every bit helps. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you. Any other public members?
Is anyone else, wishing to speak? Please raise your hand by the raise the hand icon, or *9 if you're phoning in.
Anyone else, Leslie?
I see a phone number. I have a
Hello.
I have a different. Yes.
Yes. Yeah, this is Steve Thompson. I live at 59 Fremont Road. I live directly across from 54 Fremont. I'm at the very end of Fremont Road. What I've heard so far are exceptional comments in regards to the redwood trees. However, I would like to bring up an equally significant issue, and the fact that the letter that I sent to most of you at the Design Review Board, and Alicia and many others, the mayor, had to do with the fact that it seems to be a forgotten matter of this project being steamrolled at the expense of everybody in the neighborhood. And for what? And for what? Financial interest, of course. For a couple of real estate speculators that have had their eyes on the prize for many years. I've seen it for the last 30 years that I've lived here, and it's intolerable. The outrage you hear from the public is quite justified. And all of you sit there in your offices, have a chance, an opportunity to really do something that makes a difference to the people that live here already, that pay their city taxes, support San Rafael. And I can't imagine why you would ignore that and to let this project steamroll it further down the road. There is the issue of the foundation. I put it in my letter to all of you yesterday that speaks to the fact that there is an aquifer that runs under the property. It's well documented. All they have to do is drill down a proper pier depth. The architect has not drilled proper depth as per Miller Pacific Engineering report. And guess what? This aquifer also feeds the redwoods that you have seem to have no problem in just demolishing. You hear a lot of outrage, and it's for very good reasons. People are emotional about this. You're people just like us. So I would implore you to really think hard about what you're doing. You're going to piss off a lot of people forever and ever. So when it comes also to the issue of parking, there is no parking up here. The fire department approved ADUs. The gentleman mentioned about the ADU decision. That got approved apparently yesterday. And does the fire department know, or does the city even care, that there is no place for parking boxes on Fremont Road? You cannot paint on dirt. It is very obvious. If any of you were to drive up here and find out for yourselves, you would see that. So the parking box program, that's your excuse. It has no merit, no basis at all on Fremont Road. So one brush to decide ADUs over the entire San Rafael does not work in every single street. You should know better than, much better than that. So I'll end my comments at that. And please, for the love of God, think what you're doing. There is a way around this mess. As many people have pointed out, other options for the design and the build. It's up to your hands.
It's been 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Next up, we have Susan Bradford.
Hello. Can you hear me?
We can.
Hi. I've been a resident for 43 years, and I want to say right from the start, I'm very passionate about saving these 9 healthy, mature redwood trees that are in my neighborhood. The climate clock is ticking. Code red has been declared. We've been told it's 8 years for us to turn things around. Money and old political paradigms can no longer be our bottom line. San Rafael has a general plan and it has a climate action declaration, and you must stick to it. You need to walk your talk, San Rafael. Is there an EIR on this? Has a current survey on the presence of the northern spotted owl been done since the one that was done quite a while ago? We have pileated woodpeckers nesting in the redwoods nearby that will be affected in a negative way. How can San Rafael call itself a tree city? If you know, even considering allowing a for-profit private developer to cut down a grove of 9 mature and healthy coastal redwoods to build a spec house that will also disrupt the neighborhood for several years. If you allow trees in this grove of sister redwoods to be cut down, you will destroy them all because their root system is interconnected. This is known science. And replacement trees would take 50 years to even begin doing what these mature redwoods are doing for us right now. There are no other trees that would even come close to being considered of equal value. These trees have diameters of as big as 37 inches. We're talking diameter, not circumference. I beg you to love these trees and nature and our future more than you love revenue and out-of-date ways of thinking. Nature doesn't have time for San Rafael to get educated. These trees are our protectors and we need to protect them as well. So I ask you, where do you stand? With nature and with the climate action plan, or with a destructive private profiteers plan? I urge you to set a precedent with these trees. I created a change.org petition that so far has 613 signatures on it that demand these trees be saved. Signatures ranging from San Rafael to Marin County to the state to the US and even internationally as well. And I will be getting back to them this evening when the meeting is over to tell them what was decided. So the whole world is watching San Rafael to see what decision you're going to make for these trees. San Rafael's environmental reputation is in full global view. So I ask you to please choose well, because these trees are healthy, they are beneficial, they are mature, they are beautiful, and they are beloved. And this for all of us, for the neighborhood, for the city, for the
Thank you,
wildlife.
Suzanne.
Thank you.
Next up is Carolyn Fowley.
Hi, good evening. Hopefully everyone can hear me. This is Caroline Foley. I live on Marquardt Avenue, just below the lot at issue. I don't know if there's anything I can top. The last two comments were absolutely fantastic, but I just wanted to mention, since I live on Marquardt, I can give my perspective. As was mentioned before, I am very concerned about erosion control and slope stability if we're taking out these 9 trees. I live directly below this. We've had flooding, we've had mudslides, or what I consider mudslides for my property. So I'm very concerned if we take these roots out from these 9 trees. Also wanted to highlight that I moved into this area, I bought my property back 5 years ago due to the beautiful redwoods in my backyard and on our street. Please don't change the landscape of this street. It's a gorgeous street. And although it is quite narrow, as was a couple comments ago, the parking here and the traffic here is absolutely horrific during the day and at night. I can't imagine anyone trying to build or have any construction trucks going up our street. So please, anyone who has not driven up Marquardt to Upper Fremont, please do so. Do so during the day, do so at night. It's narrow, it's a forest street, and I don't want it to be changed. And I hope that while every property owner has the right to do as they please, I hope that these 9 redwood trees will be taken into consideration and that we do not get rid of them. Thank you for my time.
Thank you.
If anyone else wishes to speak from the public, again, use the raise the hand icon or press *9 if you are phoning in. Give it a few seconds. Looks like there are no more public comments.
Okay, then we will close the public hearing. And before we go on to the board, is the landscape architect back on the phone that we could?
I am here.
Good.
I'm sorry about the technical issues.
That's okay.
But I've been able to hear and see everything, so I've been following along.
Do you have anything to add?
Well, I would just, I'd like to just concentrate on why this item was agendized, which has to do with the appropriateness of planting redwood trees as mitigation trees.
Okay.
And as I said in my memo, there's a number of reasons that I don't feel it's appropriate. But I think the most germane one has to do with the fact that if I were to add redwood trees in lieu of the western hazelnut, it would exceed the maximum applied water allowance and wouldn't be approved by MMWD. As I also said in the memo, it would be possible to redesign the landscaping, but it would be driven by the fact that I want to use redwoods. And then I would end up using low and very low water users in the rest of the landscape to make up for that. So while it's theoretically possible, you would end up with a design that is very, very different than what we're looking at right now. And I would also just add that what Marin Municipal Water District is currently saying is that there is water restrictions, and so they're telling applicants as they approve their plans that the irrigation limitations are inadequate to establish new plant material. And they go on further to say that new plantings will be required to comply with these and any future water restrictions. So I stand by my contentions in the memo, I guess is what I want to say.
Thank you.
You're most welcome.
Are there any questions from the board of the applicant or the public that has spoken? Seeing none.
Generally, we don't, ask the public for questions, but yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, just for clarification, if there's anything that comes up, sometimes we've done that. So then let's put it back to the board for their comments on the project.
I'll start off.
Don,
I would like a little clearer direction on exactly what we are supposed to be doing here tonight as a design review board.
Leslie, you want to take that hot potato?
Yes. So as mentioned, the subcommittee, which was authorized under the executive powers through COVID, did approve a recommendation, recommended approval of this project, but did have some questions about the landscaping, concerns from landscaping, as did the Planning Commission regarding the redwood trees. So your purview tonight is to review the memo and see if it is appropriate to add redwood trees. If there is a way to retain, the design has been given a recommendation of approval. If there's a way that you all see that can retain additional trees, I'm not sure if that is possible. And as previously mentioned, because this is going to council, if you do have some consensus items that you want to relay to council, that could be mentioned as well. That could be passed on to council.
So our job here tonight is to review the recommendations of the existing landscape plan.
Correct.
And give any
And
recommendations.
Correct. And Dave Hogan, planner, do you have any further clarification since you are?
No,
Yeah.
That's it.
No.
Okay, thank you.
I believe the planning manager accurately stated the purpose of tonight's meeting. So I have nothing constructive to add at this time.
Any, Don, do you have any comment? You want to start off the comments?
Well, it sounds like our hands are tied somewhat. If the project has already been approved and we're just looking at us for recommendations, I agree with the arborist. I think redwoods are a horrible tree to use in residential situations. Not existing redwoods, if they're there, it's good to work around them, but adding redwoods, I think, is a mistake. Whether the horse chestnut or whatever it was used is the most appropriate, I don't know, but I'd have to think about it. But I don't see how we get around this or maneuver around it, that the plan has already been approved and it's just, we're looking at this landscape plan. And if that's the bottom line, then I would agree with the existing landscape plan.
How about you, Jeff? Any comments?
Of course. I mean, obviously obviously it's a tough one. You know, we're a recommendation board and the planning commission actually approves plans. It did pass through the planning commission 7-0. I'm sure they heard all the same arguments we've heard tonight about saving the trees, and apparently that wasn't convincing for them to change their minds about approving the plan. So as I understand it, the only task we have before us tonight really is to decide whether or not it's appropriate to add more redwood trees. I mean, saving redwood trees at this point, existing redwood trees, would obviously require a major redesign of the project, which has been approved. So some of the things that are sort of forming my opinion for tonight is, obviously there's a lot of upset in the neighborhood, and you know, it's hard to deny that they've made some real good points about trying to save the trees. So I would be in favor of, and the landscape architect said 1 to 2 redwood trees would be appropriate. So given that, and the fact that, you know, redwood trees do better in groves and they actually look better in groves, you know, I certainly be in favor of adding, you know, 1 to 2 or maybe as many as 3 to the sort of the western part of the upper western part of the property. you know, there's a lot of places around Marin where you're on south slopes and it's hot and it's dry and it's pretty tough to grow redwood trees, but this is kind of a northwest slope. It's pretty dark, it's pretty moist. And I think it actually probably has a pretty, in my opinion, it has a pretty good microclimate for planting redwood trees. And generally, if you're planting from scratch, even the recommendation for forming groves, you can plant redwood trees as close as 7 feet on center. So I think they have the room. I think they have the microclimate. I think it's it's probably a small bone to toss to the neighborhood who's upset about the loss of these trees. And, I'm fully aware that this isn't going to satisfy the neighborhood. And, obviously their next step is to take this to city council and make their pitch there. But at this point, those are my comments.
Thank you. Stuart?
Thanks. Yeah, and this is an extraordinarily tough one. And, that's why we're here. And I do really have listened carefully to what people said, and I sympathize with the problems. I'm sitting here, look, I agree with Jeff. If there's a way to, I know it's a token, but if there's a way to make 2 or 3 of them viable, then I think that effort should be made. Taking a closer look, I don't have all the little pieces of this or the arborist report in front of me, but I do wonder, and I just am going to ask the landscape architect and the arborist and the applicant to just take another look. I'm sure they've looked at this ad nauseum, but I'm looking at their tree plan, and one of the trees, probably the largest redwood tree that's coming out, tree 5. I'm asking myself when I look at the drawing, why is that tree coming out? Just as an architect, I'm looking at it. I don't see a structure in its way. Yes, it's kind of close to the house. Doesn't look like they're grading in that area. So I'm just wondering, are there any heroic measures that can be made to save that tree? And I would just ask that get looked at. And also tree 18, I don't know why it's coming out, because it's got some strange proposed structure down near the entry stair. Does that one really need to come out? Or again, can some heroic measures be made? I say that because, someone talked about Larkspur. I designed a custom house in Larkspur in Madrone Canyon about 4 years ago, and very intentionally and purposely designed it around a grove of redwood trees because we did not want to touch that redwood grove. So, there are efforts that can be made, and we made those extraordinary efforts, including changing how we constructed the foundations around those trees by cantilevering grade beams and moving piers in an effort to save those trees. So I'm going to ask the applicant to kind of go back to the well and just talk to their arborist and talk to their landscape architect, talk to their structural engineer, and see, is there a way that any of these trees that they've proposed to cut down through some extra measures could be saved? So I'm not going to require it, but I'm going to certainly highly recommend it. So that's what I have to say. I'm just wondering why a couple of them are coming out as we kind of dig down in this deeper. So if there's a combination of saving a couple, planting 2 or 3, meeting somewhere in the middle. I know people don't want these lots developed at all, but I think something's going to happen there. So if we can save a few of these, that would be great.
Thanks, Stuart. How about Sharon?
I have a couple of comments.
Sure.
One, I have a question for Dave Hogan. These lots have a minimum 10,000 square foot, and they're both significantly less than 10,000 square feet. Do they still get the 2,500 square foot minimum house plus 10% of the hill, even though they are not meeting the 10,000 square foot lot?
As I understand it, there's no reduction system in the city ordinance for the maximum house size. So they're old lots, subdivided 100 years ago or more. In modern day subdivision.
It's being subdivided right now. They're changing the lot lines now.
Yeah, they want to alter, the 2 property owners want to alter the existing lot line.
That's right. And so they want to have 2 lots that are non-conforming. Right, yes. They're both under 10,000 square feet.
Yes, just like both lots are today. Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I thought maybe there was a percentage or some way to take that down because you get to build significantly more because it's not a 10,000 square foot lot.
I guess if they wanted to, they could. The applicant has not chosen to do that.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't, yeah, I think that the city would have to require it. I don't think the applicant would ever choose that.
Yeah.
I also thought that don't we have an ordinance that you can't build any more ADUs on streets narrower than 12 or 11 feet?
I'll let the
I
planning
could answer
manager
that
give the
question.
update.
Yeah. So City Council yesterday approved an ordinance, the ADU ordinance, to replace the urgency ordinance, and chose not to include that prohibition. So there is no prohibition on any particular streets.
Okay, good to know. And I think that this could be redesigned to save those trees. I think that you'll stabilize the hill. These trees are important parts of this ecosystem. I think it's insane to take them out. I think that the design needs to go back to the drawing board and start again. I think that they are not working towards the best possible use of this land and appreciating the slope and the flooding and what those trees are doing to hold back the hill and the flooding that could possibly happen. I would not like to be part of approving this project. I don't feel it's good, and I feel that it could be good if they would redesign.
Well, what do you think of the planting plan? That's all we're looking at.
I don't think you should add redwoods. I think you should keep redwoods that you have. 36-inch, 100-year-old trees. Those should stay. It's hubris to take them out.
Anything else, Sharon?
No, I think I've said it.
Thank you. Well, I have to agree with you, Sharon. First of all, I don't understand how this got approved originally. This was originally back in 2018. I don't remember it myself, although I was on the board then. I may have been absent that time. I think that if any of these issues had been brought out at that point, there would have been more of concern for the architects and the landscape architects to reconsider all these issues at that time. Having said that, I know that we're only supposed to opine, and we're not even supposed to approve, I guess, at this point, since the thing has already been approved by the Planning Commission. All we're basically doing is reviewing it, giving our blessing, but it's not really anything that would even be adhered to. But I would make a strong go on record that I strongly oppose the project the way it's designed, so that when it goes to the city council, I would hope that they would consider that very carefully, because it really could be designed. It's not like this. These are small enough lots, and that they had to put these houses where they were. Right. They could have redesigned around most of these redwoods that they're losing, if not all of them. And so I just don't understand how it got this far along with all these issues. Not just saving the redwoods, but the parking on a narrow street like this, the drainage, all that. It just it doesn't make sense to me. So I'm sorry that it's come this far, but I don't think I would like to see it proceed the way it is. I think it needs to be redesigned.
Is there a process for that? Is there?
No, it's all. This is already gone by the DRB. It's already gone by the Planning Commission. It's been approved 7-0, 7-0, right? And so they fully endorsed it based on the previous recommendations of the DRB and the DRB City Subcommittee. And so now the only thing is, because of all the entitlements, it has to go to the City Council. And maybe I should say one other thing. When you're asking for this many entitlements, it seems like that the design should be better, and it's not. And it's just kind of ignored so many of these issues that I just don't see how all these entitlements could be granted
Yeah.
easily. I mean, and, you know, when in the past, you know, we talk about the hillside design guidelines, and they are guidelines. They're not, you know, written in stone. And we have, in fact, as a board, recommended approval of things that did not conform to the guidelines because we had an outstanding design, or there were some mitigating factors that allowed the applicants to bend the rules or even break them to some extent in order to get a better design and a better environmental solution. But this isn't one of them. So that's all we can do, I think, is to express our concerns, and hopefully the city council will actually watch this or listen or read the report, read the minutes, and come to their own conclusions. Anyway, so it's not clear to me now if it's already been approved by the planning commission, whether it needs to even have any kind of a vote, because it seems like it doesn't matter. But should we have some kind of a maybe I should ask for Rob again.
Don't we need a recommendation on the planting plan?
Yes, please. I think at this point, you know, I have been listening carefully to the commissioners and the members of the public and the concerns that everybody has. But I think it would be most helpful if we could get some consensus or some agreement from the commissioners as to whether or not there should be planting redwoods on the site. That's really the item before the board tonight. So I would ask if you can either make a motion or have a board consensus as to what the right approach is.
Well, I'll start that with saying, I know I'm not a big fan of redwoods in residential areas, but I would certainly agree with Kent in this situation where we could add 2 or 3 somewhere. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Any other?
Do we need a second for that?
Sure.
I would just request that if we're going to have a motion, it be in the form of a motion. And
All right,
I
so
would recommend the motion.
Don, are you making it as a motion?
Yeah, I'll make it a motion.
All right, is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Jeff seconds it. Any discussion on the motion?
Yeah, does anybody want to pile on with me and urge the applicant to go back to the board just to see if any heroic measures would save any of the existing trees between their arborist, and I'll let my landscape architect colleagues on here comment if that's viable at all.
I've had very little success with it, I'll tell you. The redwoods are so surface rooted. The bad thing is the lime and the concrete foundations is just poison to redwoods. It may kill them, and then you have a dead one on your hands you have to deal with.
Well, and worse yet, if you do something and it destabilizes the tree, then you know what happens after that is catastrophic.
Exactly. Good point.
Okay, doke.
Any other discussion on the motion? I don't know. I guess maybe I should ask Rob. I would prefer abstain on this vote, just because I don't think that it makes any difference because I don't like the project as it is. So, you know, voting in support of this motion doesn't seem to be in the best interest of it.
Well, I
so
think
can I abstain? Can I abstain?
You're welcome to abstain. I think given the amount of public interest in the project, if it does continue on as designed up to the council, my experience with the council is they're very likely to review all of your remarks and they will be considered. But it's up to you, Chair Paul, whether you wish to participate in the vote.
Can I just insert what I believe is in your bylaws? I believe that you would have to cast a vote based on your bylaws unless there's a reason for abstaining.
Can I interject one thing here? Larry, you have to understand, the design review board has already approved this project. We approved it before it went to city council. Now, it wasn't you and I, we weren't in the subcommittee, but it's already been approved. I don't think it's gonna look very good for the design review board to come back, yeah, we approved this, but only kidding. Now we don't like it.
Yeah, but we don't need to save face. We need to do the right thing.
You want to get the city sued?
No, I
No,
want to go on
like
record. I
that,
do not want to get the city sued, but I would like to.
Can
do
I
the right
please
thing.
make clear in response to that last remark that regardless of what action the design review board decides to take tonight, it will not provide the ground or basis for any action by anyone in court. And so I just said I need to kind of jump back on the Zoom and make that remark.
I think we've been asked to vote on a specific issue, and it's a very narrow focus.
Exactly.
I think our duty is to vote on that issue.
I agree.
Agree.
Okay. So then, all those in favor of the motion?
Oh, I'm going to do a roll call if that's all right.
I'm sorry? Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah.
I'd like to do a roll call. That's okay. Sorry. For accessibility.
I forgot we're
reasons.
doing that now.
Yes.
This is a very procedure.
We'll get it. Board Member Blaney.
Aye.
Board Member Kent.
Aye.
Board Member Kowalski.
I don't know which way to go here. I will say aye with reservations. Can I do that? Or do I have to abstain?
Sure, we'll do aye with reservations. Board Member Summers.
Aye.
Vice Chair Reggie is absent and Chair Paul.
I'll say no. Because I don't like the idea of planting redwoods. I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
So that's.
Thank you.
That's the tough part of the meeting.
Thank you, board members.
Thank you. I think we need a director's report now.
Yes. The director is here. I will start. I think we kind of gave it away. We had a preview, which is that at the city council meeting last night, city council did adopt the new ADU ordinance based on staff recommendation to not include a prohibition on certain streets. And for those of you who were not in attendance, there was substantial discussions with staff and when I say staff, it was the city attorney's office, the fire department, as well as planning staff, to come up what we felt was a ordinance that was compliant with state law. That was very key. HCD will be reviewing this ordinance for consistency with state law. But in addition, to take into account the concerns about safety of these narrow streets. So Chief White spoke and made it clear that there are narrow streets and there are issues with access, but the issue is a pre-existing issue, and did not feel that a prohibition on ADU development was warranted based on that. So the council did unanimously pass that ordinance. So just so you know, additionally, at this time, the ordinance also doesn't include any discretionary review of ADUs. So the ADUs will be subject to what is a ministerial process. If you meet A, B, and C, then you get the ADU. So you may see projects such as this one that have an ADU included, but there's no actual part of discretion to excise that ADU from the rest of the project or to say no to that ADU. Other than that, that's really what I have for the director's report. I think I mentioned this last time, but I want to mention again in case anyone was not there. We are picking up again our look into objective design standards, and this is something that we would like to complete. We have just, I believe it was started right before COVID and put on hold till about a couple of weeks ago. So the idea is to come up with objective design standards, including things, well, we're looking at lists of lighting, colors, articulation, and to make sure that that we have what we want for projects that are going through SB 35 that are only bound by subjective design standards. So that will be coming to you guys early in this, probably late winter, well, whatever it is, February. I'm looking at February, perhaps late January for the DRB input. And, oh, the housing element, yes. You know, Director Giudice, can you, I apologize for bringing you up, but I actually am not super up to date on, I know that there was a meeting in, I think, beginning November, but I think you'd be better able to discuss what's going on with the housing element.
Sure, I'd be happy to. So we did have a kickoff community meeting on November 4th to get our housing element started. The housing element is basically on a cycle, a 5-year cycle, and that will update the current housing element, which was last adopted in 2014. I might be off on that. So the effort is really kind of a fast-paced effort. We have an adoption that is required by December, by the end of the next year, 2022. So we have to have an adopted plan by January 2023. So we have used Barry Miller for the general plan update, and we're using him again for the housing element. It seemed to be makes sense, an easy transition. He's familiar with the issues that came up in the general plan, so he'll be very well versed and is familiar with the community. They know him, and he understands some of the issues. So he will be moving that forward. You may already know that we have a housing manager that will also be kind of managing that project, kind of making sure that it continues to move forward as quickly as we need to move, because it is, like I said, a fast-paced process. That housing element needs to be in draft form by June of next year so that we can send that housing element to the Housing and Community Development Department. This is a state agency. And once they bless it, then we can start the actual decision-making process. So what I wanted to mention is that we do have a website that is specially reserved for the housing element, and I'm looking that up. I think it's housingsanrafael.org. sanrafael.org. You can also contact Barry Miller, or any of us actually. We have created a special email, housing@cityofsanrafael.org, and you can just send us an email if you're interested. That'll give you an opportunity to receive information on what is happening regarding the housing element, and any updates that, any announcements for community meetings, you'll be able to get information using that. I'll leave it at that. There's tons. If you want more information, like I said, you can go to the city's website, housing element, cityofsanrafaelhousing.org, and you can get more information there.
And then the last item, oh, did you have a question?
No, I just wondering if that's now the director's report, but that was only the
no, I
speaking.
just have one. Yeah, exactly. I know we have the real thing here today. The next thing I just wanted to mention is your next DRB meeting will be on December 7th. So you have the rest of the month off. Yay. And you will be, yes.
May I will not be able, unfortunately, to make that meeting. So I'd like to put it on the
Thank
record
you.
now so you
Okay.
guys can make sure you have a quorum.
Yes, please. And I know that the holidays are upon us. So if anyone else knows ahead of time, because we will,
What's the date of that meeting?
if we, December 7th. And you will be viewing the.
Wait a minute,
Aldersley
December 7th.
retirement.
That's the boards and commissions Christmas party, holiday party.
That's from 4 to 6. So you have time to get home in front of your Zoom. You
Don't drink
can't
too much
have
champagne.
no wine.
Drinking then, right?
No drinking.
I don't think I can be there either.
I'm not sure I'll be there myself. That may have to be postponed.
Yeah, well, let me know, honestly.
What do you think, Sharon? Can you make it? You probably can't
I
make it.
can make it. And I'll vote for all of you. So it's no problem.
Can we
You
give her
could be
a
a
proxy?
subcommittee of one.
You know, we've never thought of that. Can we just give her a proxy vote?
Yeah.
Sure,
That's
yeah.
allowed. Rob, are we allowed to give proxies?
He's still watching the game.
No.
He's still watching the game, right? Listening with one ear.
Glad to report the Warriors won big.
Yay.
Yay.
Is that
I
it?
might
Leslie?
make I might make the first half hour of the board's party, then I gotta get out. So
Is that it for the director
This
report?
is, yeah, this is the party though. That's just the pre-party, so you'll miss the party. That's all. That's all.
Hey, you know, this has been a problem. Just Leslie, you're new. They do this to us every year. They schedule the party on the day of a DRB meeting, without fail. And it's been like we've mentioned it. We've said, hey, can you not do that? Make it Wednesday night. I mean, something Thursday night.
That makes
Without-
more sense.
I'm gonna bring it.
But they're not
I'm gonna bring it
concurrent.
up
You could
myself.
do both, right? Is
You
it the
could.
drinking that we're talking about? Or
Yes, of course. Well, not only drinking, but once you get into a party mode, you want to come and do, would you want to sit through this meeting after going to a holiday party?
No, absolutely not. There better not be any projects like tonight. My goodness.
Yeah.
Or they could be all on consent calendar and real consent calendar items, so there's no discussion.
And how far did that get us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Is there any other board communications?
Let's alert the council of 2022. It can't be on the same night as DRB. We'll put the clerk on notice.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Is there any other board communication?
Time to go.
Well, I want to say one thing. I think that, and I think Rob mentioned this and someone, maybe Leslie, we really need to figure out what we're doing here. If we are passing projects on to the planning commission and not feeling comfortable about them and having them come back, if they get this entitlement that is somehow cut or etched in stone, we don't really have anything to say at that point. So it doesn't make sense. And I've been on this board a long time, and I don't recall it being like that in the past. So something must have changed, and we just need to change with it.
I think that the first couple big projects, what happened was that the applicants were extremely frustrated with the process and pretty much pressured and begged staff a couple of years ago to let them get to the next level because they didn't have these critical answers about use and then planning commission type things like density. And it started to become which came first, were they even going to be allowed to have those sort of densities and bigger problems before they even talked about design? And then, it is a complicated thing. So I don't know, is there a way to do some sort of joint I mean, that sounds onerous by all means, but maybe if it's one agenda item, because it's something big.
It's been done. We've had joint meetings with the PC. We did it on Loch Lomond. We did it on Northgate with the Costco project. But the other thing I'd like to say is I have never seen confusion over a consent item ever. And tonight there was just an unbelievable amount of confusion over it. We have always voted on consent items. They were always coming back to us with the change, and we were always recommended approval or not approval. So I don't really quite understand what happened tonight, quite frankly.
Well, I think everybody agrees that Rob and staff and this board and everybody probably should all somehow put our heads together and you know, staff can certainly prepare some options and that make sense to them, and then we can all chime in. And it seems like that's got to happen.
We're certainly glad to work with staff on the process, and we'll be doing so in the interim and coming back to this board with recommendations.
Excellent.
Good.
Good.
All right. Thank you all for sticking with it, but I guess we can now be adjourned.
Thank you, folks.
Yeah,
Bye-bye.
thank you.
See you
Good
at the
night.
party before the next meeting.
Yeah,
Have a happy
good-
Thanksgiving too.
I need to take
Yeah.
one off, I think. So, all right, see you guys.